Kadash is your name. Your kingdom come and your will be done on the earth as in the Shama. Oh, oh, give us this yam our daily lakam, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors, and lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the wicked. For yours is the kingdom, and the power, and the esteem forever. Barak Yahuwah. Oh.
Akuti Shannon, is that you?
In the Shama.
Shannon Bodine, you say I'm in a trap, but I won't bow down. Hallelujah, Yahuwah.
Your will be done on the earth as in the
Rumamu Yahuwah, Abba Yahuwah to the top.
Give us this yam our daily lakam.
I'm so happy to see that you're here, Akuti.
As we
Abba Yahuwah, you have answered our call once again. Hallelujah, Yahuwah.
But deliver us from the wicked.
Yes.
For yours is the kingdom, and the power, and the esteem forever. Barak Yahuwah. Oh. Give us this yam our daily lakam, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors, and lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the wicked. For yours is the kingdom, and the power, and the esteem forever. Give us this yam our daily lakam, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors, and lead us not into temptation. Oh, then forever.
Shannon. Cody, we have been palaling for you. And not only have we been palaling for you, but we put out missing reports about you. Those of you who have done this, go ahead and please remove those off of social media when you get a chance and opportunity. Cody Shannon, hopefully you'll be with us here when we go to TikTok, when we have open mic night. I would truly, and I think all of us would truly love to hear your voice. Can you do that for us? Will you go on TikTok with us later? We have truly been worried about you. I don't have my TikTok. I can try to open it. Okay. All right. Well, your phone does work. Do you still have the same number? Got me off my medicine, though. Your mom has the phone. Okay. Well, when you get an opportunity, email me your new number. Email me your number, okay? You know how to get a hold of me. However you need to get a hold of me, send me your number. I want to talk to you, please. All right? But we praise our Abba Yahuwah for your safety, that we heard your voice. Nazareth, you said you should be able to start a new live on YT and link up. Cody Nazareth, you're talking to a newbie to this platform. You're gonna have to teach me that one. Same cell phone. Okay. Well, I'm just so thankful that you're wonderfully been taken care of. Yahuwah's been answering our palals, and I know he will continue to answer our palals. And we're going to palal to him right now that he has brought you back to us safely and that you came here. Let us palal. Heavenly Abba Yahuwah, the one who is, who was, and is to come. You who are the Aleph and the Taw, the beginning and the end. You say that you are the first and the last. You are Al Shaddai, the Almighty. Abba, Tuda'ata, for this wonderful gift today of our Akut, having the right frame of mind to come to the Mishpachah, to her family, to let us know that she has been in your arms and that she is safe. Abba, Tuda'ata, for once again answering our palal. I know many of us are moved right now, especially those of us who have been in the presence of our Akudi. Abba, we ask that you will continue to keep our Akut in safety under your bosom. May you go before her, O Abba, and that you encamp all of your Malakim around her. Keep her out of any harm or danger, O Abba, that comes near her way. May you truly free her from everything and anything that may still be tethered to her, O Abba, in the mighty name of your Ben Yahusha. Abba, for we know that you're capable and able to do all things, for there is nothing that is impossible for you. And Abba, we know that you hear us. We know that you hear us, O Abba, because we are trying to keep your Torah. You have brought us a long way, O Abba, all of us, as a group. And those that are not part of this group, O Abba, that you are waking up them as well and showing them this truth as well, O Abba. And we know that you are marking your people, you are sealing your people before the great and terrible day that is coming upon all of humanity. Abba, we palal that you would send in those that need to hear this truth, those that also have been called by your name, those that you will open up their eyes this yom, so that they too may see the Amat. For you are the Amat. You are the Darak, the way. You are also the Kai, the life. Abba, we ask that you would open up our minds. May you deposit your word in each one of our hearts, so that we may not transgress against you. For we know that the time is short, and we know that the enemy is not holding back anything now. And he is going to start making his presence known. But we know because of your promise, you're going to do the same, O Abba. And so we bring you back into the remembrance of your word, O Yah. For you said, greater works than these shall we do. And we know that that time is coming where you shall pour upon us your Ruach HaKadosh, as you have done in the past. You shall do it once again in this latter rain. Abba, I just ask that you prepare us, your Ami, your people, that we may walk before you spotless and blameless and removed away from this world. All these things we ask and we praise and exalt your name. In the name of your Ben Yahushua HaMashiach. And we all say hallelujah, hallelujah, and hallelujah, Amat. Rumamu Abba Yahuwah. Yes. Praise Abba Yahuwah. Ooh, I'm so thankful. I'm so thankful. Cody, I'm so thankful that you're back with us. I'm so thankful that Abba Yahuwah, his promises are all yes, and so be it. I'm so thankful. I am so thankful. Wow, I'm speechless. I am truly speechless. Akudi Carson, if you're listening, my young sister, shalom to you and your family. I also palal that Abba Yahuwah is working wonders in your home. Don't give up the walk. Do honor your parents and continue to do the work of an evangelist. But don't put yourself in harm's way. Remember, Abba Yahuwah has given you a mind, a beautiful mind at that. Please use it. Please use it for his esteem. Okay? He will lead you and guide you by his Ruach. Mishpachah, I want to show you all something. I'm going to show you proof why we all were ensnared. We were entrapped. We were caused to believe the spell that was placed on each and every last one of us, especially if you were in Christianity, and especially if you've read any of the so-called King James versions, the New King James Version. I'm going to be showing you out of both of those how these scribes caused us to believe what they wanted us to believe. There is so many things that this world has changed. And I'm just going to show you two today. But they're big enough to where you're going to see and I'm going to see how they have literally fed us their doctrine. One of the Akis who just came here to Vegas just recently, he said to me, he goes, Aki, how did we believe the lie? How was it that we didn't see this before? And the only thing that came to my mind at that very moment was, Aki, it wasn't time for us to see. Abba Yahuwah did not open our eyes yet until now to see these things. But it was there. It was always there. It was in the book. It was even in the footnotes. Okay? But as many of you know, we don't read. We don't inspect. We don't truly understand what the Apostle Shaul was saying when he said in 2 Timothy chapter 2, or was it chapter 3? Let's go there. Let's go there. Chapter 2, I'm going to be reading out of the Hallelujah Scriptures, by the way. Let me put this here. You can see. Let me blow it up a little bit. I see I might have to separate my doggies. I don't know what it is about my little hazelnut. As soon as I give her food, she's just like a little child. You give them sugar and they just go crazy. And they just, for the next hour, they're just bouncing off the walls. Okay. But notice what it says here in 2 Timotheus, also known as 2 Timothy, chapter 2, verse 15. Do your utmost to present yourself approved to Alua Alahim, to the mighty of mighty ones, a worker, a laborer, one who is doing, who does not need to be ashamed, rightly handling the word of truth. Now, your King James Version is going to use the word dividing. Now, the word dividing is a great illustration of looking into the word, to divide the word, to dissect the word. Hold on one second. Let me get these dogs under control. In the cage. Come here. You, in the cage. Relax. All right. Sorry about that. So we are told to rightly handle, or to say rightly divide, the word of truth. Now, when this was written, for many of you who already know this, what I'm about to say, and I'm going to say it again because it is the truth. When this letter was written to his apprentice, to Apostle Shaul, also known as Paul's apprentice, Timothy, who was a young man who was being trained by Paul how to conduct himself as a leader. He was saying to Timothy to rightly handle the word of truth. Now, we know that this letter was not part of the canonized, what we call scripture. So what was Shaul speaking of when he said the word of truth? Many of you already know. He's talking about the Tanakh. He's talking about what many people have miscalled the Old Testament. That is the scripture. That is the only thing that is called the scripture. It was given by the inspiration of the Ruach HaKodesh, the set apart spirit, to men. And these men wrote down as they were being moved, as Kappa said, Peter said, by the inspiration of the Ruach HaKodesh. So they didn't just write what they wanted to write. They were literally, if you would, and I don't want to use it this way, but it was as if Yahuwah was in them and imparting into them his mind of what they are to say and how they are to write it. The scripture, the word of truth. Now, I say this because we're also told in Deuteronomy, and I can't remember exactly where it's at. One of you, I'm sure, does. Where does it say that you are not to add nor to take away from this word? I know that it is in Deuteronomy. Where is that in Deuteronomy? Somebody know? Is it in chapter 6? Let me grab the scriptures. I know somebody's looking it up for me right now. Tuda'ata. 4:2. Tuda'ata aki amano. Wow. Okay, yes, here it is. Tuda'ata ma'ak. And to those who are looking it up. Notice what it says here, and I'm reading this one out of the scriptures. TS 2009. Chapter 4, verse 2 of Deuteronomy, also known as the Dabarim. Do not add to the word that I command you, and do not take away from it, so as to guard the commands, that is to keep the commandments of Yahuwah, your Alua Alahim, your mighty of mighty ones, that I am commanding you. The commands that he has told us to keep. Now, only in 2 places, in what has been canonized as the 66 books, do we read about this instruction. One is here in Deuteronomy, and the other one is in Revelation chapter 22. We are not to add nor to take away from these instructions because they're very, very important to the saving of the being or to the saving of the soul. Case in point, let me show you something that has come across my research. Now, when I was doing this, and we're going to get into it, what does it mean to be under the law? Many of us believed when we read in the letters of Shaul, aka Paul, where he says that you are no longer under the law, but you are under, as they say in their pagan translations, grace. Ours would say favor. You're no longer under the law, you are under favor. And we believed the way that they translated it to us. Let me show you what they did with the word. Let us go to, let me see if I can remember here, because I wrote this down. Give me a second. Yes. Okay. Let's start off at Matthew chapter 15. Matthew chapter 15. Let's check this out together. Okay? Now, because we're getting ready to get into this study, I'm going to shut off the comments. I would like for you guys to pay attention, please, because I need you to notice and I need you to be able to share with others, because it's going to come across your conversation with those that you're trying to share this truth with about how we're not to keep the law. And we know that we are to keep the law. But you need to see this for yourself. And so with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and shut off the comments. I'll turn it back on afterwards. For those of you who are interested, I want you to check this out. So we're going to go to Matthew chapter 15. And for those of you who are taking notes, this is going to help you with your ministry as it relates to sharing the truth and how we have been lied to. These lying pens of the scribes, man, I tell you, it's the reason why we all drank the Kool-Aid. So in Matthew chapter 15, verse 9, it says this: "But in vain do they worship me, teaching as the teachings, the commandments of Alua Alahim." No, that's not what it says, does it? It says, "But in vain they do worship me, teaching as teachings, the commandments or commands of men." This right here is exactly what you and I experienced when we was in Christianity. They gave us a new set of laws. They gave us a new set of commandments. They weren't teaching us the commandments of Yahuwah anymore. No, they said that has been done away with. So they gave us their commandments, the commandments of men. And we didn't even question it. Let's go to Matthew chapter 13, a chapter back. Starting at verse 1, it says this: "And on that day, Yahusha," that is the name of the Mashiach, the Messiah, Yahusha, "went out of the house and sat by the sea. And a large crowd were gathered together to him, so that he went into a boat and sat down, and all the crowd stood on the beach. And you know this parable about the sower of the seed. And at the end of that parable, he says this: he who has an ear, let him hear. And the taught ones came and said to him, why do you speak to them in parables? Why do you speak to them? They didn't say to us. The disciples, the Talmudim, asked a question to the Messiah, why do you talk to the people in parables? And he answering and said to them, because it has been given to you, Mishpachah, to know the secrets of the reign of the Shamayim, the kingdom of the heavens. But to them, it has not been given. What hasn't been given to them? The secrets, the hidden meaning to his words. Why do you think the same person can read the same passage and come away with a different understanding? Because it wasn't given to them. It wasn't given to them. And that's sad to say, but it's the truth. People ask the question, well, how come they can't see this or how come they can't see that? And you've heard me say it right here on this live cast many of times. Only the Ruach HaKodesh can reveal this to you. Some people get bent out of shape. Oh, so are you saying in a slick way that I didn't say anything other than the only way that a person can see this, which is truth, this is a mat, is if the Creator opens your eyes to see it. Now, let's go to Ecclesiastes chapter 12. Ecclesiastes chapter 12. Ecclesiastes chapter 12. It's the very last chapter. And we're going to read from 9 to the end. Notice what it says. And besides being wise, Ko'alat also taught the people knowledge. And he listened and sought out, set in order many proverbs. Ko'alat is another name for Sholomah. Ko'alat sought to find out words of delight and words of truth, rightly written, not falsely written, but rightly written, or to say truth, factual information. The words of the wise are like goads, and as nails driven by the masters of collections. They were given by one shepherd. Notice the shepherd is capitalized, letting us know we're speaking about the Mashiach. I am the righteous shepherd. I am the great shepherd. And besides these, my son, my bane, be warned. The making of many books has no end, and much study is a wearying of the flesh. Let us hear the conclusion of the entire matter. Fear Alua Elohim and guard his commands, keep his commandments, for this applies to only Yasharal. Let's let that sink in for a second. For this applies only to Yashra'al. It doesn't say that, do it? It says to all mankind, all of Adam's kind. For Alua Elohim shall bring every work into right ruling, including all that is hidden, whether in righteousness or whether in evil. Whatever we have done in this body, we're going to give an account. Let us think about that before we think about transgressing his law, especially after you've come into this truth, especially. Let us continue. Let's go to Luke. Let's go to Luke. There's people that say then nobody can keep the law. They say, well, except for the Messiah, right? Luke chapter 1, we're going to read verses 5 and 6. Lucas chapter 1, verses 5 and 6. It says, there was in the days of Herodas, the sovereign of Yehuda, the king of Yehuda, Herod is his name, you may know him, a certain priest named Zachariah, of the division of Abijah. And his wife was of the daughters of Aaron. That lets you know she is of the priesthood. She comes from the priesthood line of Aaron. And her name was Elisheba. You know her as Elizabeth. And they, Zachariah and Elisheba, were both righteous before Alua Elohim. Listen to this. Blamelessly walking, not talking, walking in all the commands and righteousnesses of Yahuwah. This is before our Mashiach came in the flesh. These are the parents of Yohanan the Immerser, John the Baptist. His parents were doing the law. Did they ever break it before? Of course they did. Everyone is a transgressor of the law at one time or another in their life. But they were walking it out. It says that they were both righteous before Alua Elohim, blamelessly walking. You and I can also be blameless. And if you are walking out this walk by doing what they're doing, they were walking in all the commandments. Nobody can keep 613 commandments. Well, are you calling this part of this passage a lie? Are you saying that you can't do it? Or is it that you don't want to do it? That's all of us. We're all guilty. Sometimes we don't want to keep the law. We feel like we deserve. Let me put it that way. We deserve to transgress the law. We deserve to sin. You know, hey, nobody ain't looking. It's just me. After all, I'm just going to ask Abba Yahuwah to forgive me. No one's any of the wiser. And I'm going to keep on doing what I was doing. I'm going to get back on that straight and narrow again. But I deserve to do this sin right now. And then I'm going to get back on. Because after all, Yahuwah knows I'm but flesh and I'm a weak man. Giving ourselves all these reasons how we are thinking, how we're going to not keep his law. It's crazy. Real quick, Aki Chris, there's nothing wrong with your phone. I have turned off the comments for now until after I'm done with the teaching of what I'm sharing. Okay, and then I will turn back on the comments. There's nothing wrong. You're not blocked. Nobody is blocked in that sense. But I have turned off the comments for now. And so here we see again that they walked blamelessly, keeping the commandments, and they were in righteousness before Yahuwah. But let's continue. Now let's go to Romans chapter 13. We're going somewhere with this because I need you to see something. Romans chapter 13, verses 8 and 10. Romans 13, 8 and 10 says this. Owe no one any matter except to love one another, to ahaba one another. For he who ahaba another has filled the Torah, or has completed the Torah. You have done what the Torah tells you to do, is what it means to fill or fulfill or to complete. You have done what was required. For this, you shall not commit adultery, the seventh commandment. You shall not murder, the sixth commandment. You shall not steal. That's the eighth, the eighth commandment. You shall not bear false witness, the ninth commandment. You shall not covet, the 10th commandment. And if there is any other command, it is summed up in this word: you shall love your neighbor as yourself. Isn't this the same thing that the Mashiach said to the rich young ruler? The rich young ruler in Matthew chapter 19 was told something very similar to what Paul, those who say that Paul says that the law has been done away with, yet here it is in Romans chapter 13, the apostle Paul is quoting Exodus chapter 20 and Exodus chapter 19, or Leviticus chapter 19, where it says there that you are to love your neighbor as yourself. It is summed up, it is summarized. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. Why did we take that as a new commandment in Christianity? Why did we think that that replaces the 6 commandments that has to do with loving our neighbor? Because the first 4 commandments, the first, second, third, and fourth, is how we show that we love Yahuwah. Now, let me show you what was revealed to me today and some other things that have been revealed, how we've been lied to. If we go back to this passage, and you guys have heard me repeat this over and over again about this young rich ruler, I want you to see something here. Matthew chapter 19, verse 16, and it reads, "And see, one came and said to him, Righteous teacher, what righteous thing shall I do to have everlasting life?" Again, check the question. What shall I do to have everlasting life? This is the question that we all had, even in Christianity. And he said to him, the Messiah, he, capitalized, said to him, lowercase, him, "Why do you call me righteous? No one is righteous except one, Alua Elohim, the mighty of mighty ones. But if you want to enter into life," what life? Everlasting life. That's the topic here. If you want to enter into life, keep the commandments, guard the commands. Now, when we was in Christianity, we read this. I'm sure there was even sermons that were said on it. And we never thought about what was just said. The Messiah says, if you want everlasting life, keep the commandments. He didn't say anything about believing in him. Why? Because they're one and the same. He is the word manifested. So when we say we believe in him and he is the word manifested, and what word are we talking about? The Tanakh, the Old Testament, as they falsely call it. He is Genesis to Malachi. He is every word between the first word in Genesis to the last word in Malachi. It's all from him. It's all been inspired by him, not the New Testament. The New Testament was not inspired by him. This is why it is not called the scripture. But the New Testament backs up. If it has been written correctly, it is supposed to back up the foundational teachings of what we know as the Tanakh, the Old Testament. I've said this before and I'm going to say it again. The New Testament cannot validate itself. The New Testament must be validated by the Old Testament. It cannot stand on its own. The New Testament cannot stand on its own. It must be validated. It must be validated by the Tanakh, the Old Testament. And so here he says to this young rich ruler, he said to him, which one? The young rich ruler asked the Messiah, which one am I to keep, since you say keep the commandments to enter into life? And Yahusha, the Messiah, said to him, you shall not murder. That's the sixth commandment. You shall not commit adultery. That's the seventh commandment. You shall not steal. That's the eighth commandment. You shall not bear false witness. That's the ninth commandment. Respect your father and your mother. That's the fifth commandment. And to sum it all up, just like what Shaul said that we just read in Romans chapter 13, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. And the young man said to him, to the Messiah, all these I have watched over, or I have kept, in another way he's saying it, since I was young, since my youth. What do I still lack? So now here Yahusha is going to tell him what he lacks. I tell you what you lack. If you want to be perfect, go, sell what you have, give to the poor, and you shall have treasure in the Shama, in the heaven, and come, follow me. Now that is a mouthful right there. Because what the Messiah just said to this young rich ruler was, first of all, he was a covetous man. That was what wasn't spoken of the six commandments that deals with loving your neighbor as yourself. The one that was missing was you shall not covet. Well, when we read here, when he says to him, he says, sell what you have, give to the poor, and you shall have treasure in the Shama. But he can't wait. He wants instant gratification, right now. I need it right now. Microwave right now. Speak it into existence right now. But he didn't want it. He didn't want to follow him. It says, when the young man heard the word, he went away sad because he had what? Many possessions. He had an abundance, if you look up the word. He had a lot of accolades. He had a lot of accolades. Yes, Aki. Yes. So now check this out. Remember he said to sell everything that he has? Sell. He didn't even say give it. He said sell what you have and give that to the poor. Okay? He didn't just say give it away. He said, no, take all those possessions, take all your idols, take everything that you have hoarded, that you have collected, that you have called it your hobby. Don't give it away. Sell it. Take the proceeds and give that to the poor. Give it to the poor. And then come and follow me. This is where the first four commandments kick in. That you shall have no other mighty one except him, the first commandment. You shall not make for yourself any idols or images of anything that's in the Shamaim up in the heavens, or anything here on the Arats, or anything under the Arats, anything under the earth. The third is that you shall not take his name and make it into nothing. Your translation has misled us and say you shall not take his name in vain. It means to not know his name. It means to make his name drop out of existence, to make it into nothing. And the fourth one is to remember the Sabbath and to keep that day set apart, a particular day. This is why he says, and come follow me. I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you how to walk out the commandments. I'm going to show you how to keep the first four commandments. I'm going to show you what it means to love him with all of your heart and with all of your mind and with all of your strength. I'm going to show you. But take what you have, sell it. Because you said you did the first six, you did all of this, or the first five that I told you, that deals with loving your neighbor as yourself. But now I want you to show that you love your neighbor as yourself by taking your possessions, come on somebody, and I want you to give to your neighbors, the poor, the ones who didn't live like you, who didn't have the finer things in life like you. but give them some money. Give them so that they can take care of themselves. We're not talking about to those who are addicted to things. They too need to give or to be given to. But you know what is their hang up. So you don't give them money, you give them food. You see someone not clothed, you give them clothing, just like the Messiah said. You saw me when I was hungry and you gave me something to eat. You saw me without any clothes and you clothed me. You saw me that I was locked up and you came and visited me. And they said to him, when did we see you like this? He says, if you have done it unto the least of these, my brethren, is as if you have done it unto me. So who are we talking about? Who are his brethren? He already told you. Who is my brothers and my sisters and my mother? Except for those. Or to say, is it not they who do the will, the desire of my Father in the Shama in the heaven? These are my brothers and my sisters and my mother. There are those that are poor amongst us who know the truth, who know Yahuwah. You go and sell what you have and you give to your brethren. Come and follow me. But he didn't want to follow Yahuwah. He didn't want to keep the Shabbat. He didn't want to know his name. He didn't want to get rid of his idols. He didn't want to only worship Yahuwah. He loved his hobbies. He loved all of his merchandise, all of his so-called, and I hate the way they say it, but I'm going to say it. He loved all his merch. He loved all of his merchandise that he has at home or that he has been storing up. All of his dollar bills, y'all, racking them and stacking them. But he don't want to go and follow him. And we're not taught this when we was in Christianity, when it says, and we made songs about it, all these songs of how we're going to follow the Lamb and we're going to follow the Messiah, but we're not following the Messiah if we're not doing what he did. Was it not his custom to keep the Sabbath? Yes, it was. Was it not his custom to keep the feast days? Yes, it was. Was it not his custom when he preached to tell others to not continue in transgression of the law? Yes, it was. Just like he told a woman who was caught in the act of adultery, go and sin no more. Or as he told the young man or the man that was, I can't remember what his ailment was, but he healed him. And he says, go and sin no more unless a worse thing comes upon you. But we're being taught you don't have to keep the law. I'm going to show you where that came from. I'm going to show you where that came from. I want to make another point before we do. We're going to go to 1 Corinthians chapter, what number is that? Chapter 7. And I'm making this point because I want those of you who have maybe questioned, I don't know if I should put a lot of emphasis in the Apostle Paul's writings. I know there's some of you that are like that. Excuse me. There are some of you who are questioning, if not all out rejected, the writings of Paul. Now, we don't follow Paul. But let me tell you something about our YAH, Shaul, who they call Paul. Paul was a man who studied the scripture, the Old Testament. So much so that he was very zealous. Many of you know this story about Paul, Shaul. He was so zealous for the law that those who came into this new followers of the way, the followers of the Mashiach, he persecuted them. When his eyes were opened, the Ruach started teaching him. It says that he went off he was gone for 14 years from the area known as Judea. And he came back and he started learning from the Akis there in Jerusalem. And then he went out and started preaching. This same young man who became older now, not only does he have a zeal for Yahuwah, but now he has a zeal to teach people the true understanding of the commandments. Here in 1 Corinthians chapter 7, he says this, starting at verse 18. Was anyone called while circumcised? Meaning that you, as a man, followed the law by even snipping. You had your foreskin clipped by your parents, making sure that you were required to do so according to the parents, knowing that they had to snip their male child on the 8th day, circumcision. Let him not become uncircumcised. So this is something that has to be more than something of the flesh that Shaul is talking about. He's saying, was anyone called while circumcised? Let's put on the mindset of Shaul, of Paul. He was saying, was anyone called while knowing or following the Torah? You were following the law? Let him not become Torah-less. Was anyone called while uncircumcised? You wasn't raised in the law. You wasn't one who was raised as a Hebrew, as an Israelite, but you was raised as a Gentile. Let him not become circumcised. Let him not put on the ideology of those who think that they are justified by the law. He says the circumcision is nothing and the uncircumcision is nothing. He's saying what's happening on our bodies, our flesh, means nothing. But notice what I have underlined. But guarding the commands of Yahuwah Elohim does matter. This is Paul saying this. If the law was done away with, he would not make such a statement. If the law no longer matters and it has been done away with and it has been told to us as we've been lied to that it has been nailed to the so-called pagan cross, the Apostle Paul would not have made this statement. He says circumcision is nothing and uncircumcision is nothing, but the guarding of the commandments of Yahuwah Elohim is what matters. But wait a minute. I thought one of the commandments is that you need to snip the foreskin of your son who's 8 days old. Are they not to follow that anymore? That's not what he's talking about. That's not what he's talking about. He's saying you need to keep the commandments. But now when you keep the commandments, you do it in spirit and you do it in truth. You're keeping it because you know you're supposed to keep it. You don't act like it. You are it. People were playing hypocrisy with the law. And that's what a lot of people were doing. Oh, you're not saved unless you get circumcised. But that's not how you show love to your neighbor now, is it? By getting yourself snipped. Your neighbor don't care about you getting snipped. If anything, he might care how you're going to feel after you get snipped, because you're probably going to be not wanting to be spoken to and you're going to be irritable. You're not showing love by getting your flesh snipped. So how do you show love to your neighbor? What has been told to us in the law? This is what Shaul is talking about. But keeping the commandments of Elohim, that's what matters. First John chapter 3. We're getting to some explosive material I need you guys to see here in a minute. We're getting close. First John chapter 3, starting at verse 19. Let's read this together. And we're going to read from 19 to 24. First John chapter 3, verses 19 to 24. And by this we know that we are of the truth of the Amat, and shall set our hearts at rest before him, that is, before the Mashiach. that if our heart condemns us, Alua Elohim, the mighty of mighty ones, is greater than our heart, is greater than our conscience, and knows all. He knows everything about us. Beloved ones, if our heart does not condemn us, we have boldness toward Alua Elohim. What is he saying here? What is Yohanan John saying? He's saying that if our hearts does no longer condemn us because of our past, our conscience is clean, our conscience is clear, we have changed, we have been renewed in the Ruach HaKodesh, in spirit and in truth, because we know now we're walking in the truth. We are walking in righteousness. Now we can walk boldly up to the throne because why? We are truly his children. And so he says right here, beloved ones, if our heart does not condemn us, we have boldness towards Alua Elohim. And whatever we ask, we receive from him because we what? Because we do what? We keep his commandments. We guard his commands and do what is pleasing in his sight. And this is his commandment, that we should believe in the name, that we should believe, that is to obey in the name of the Son. What's his name? It's not Jesus. This is what has been given to us. His name is Jesus. His name is Yahusha. Right to left. YHUSHA. Yad HaUashinaim. Yahusha. I am his salvation, is the Messiah. And what else? And love one another as he gave us command to love your neighbor as yourself. Right? Okay. Let's continue. And the one guarding his commandment stays in him, abides in him, dwells in him, and he in him. And by this we know that he abides, dwells, stays in us. How does he do this? By his Ruach, by his Spirit. This is what he gave us. This is the token of our redemption. But let's continue. Let's go to 2 John. 2 John has only one chapter. And we're going to read verses 4-6. I rejoice greatly because I found some of your children walking in truth. Notice what they're doing. They're walking in the truth. How does one walk in the truth? Well, you got to follow the Mashiach. The follow the Mashiach, what did he say? First, you got to deny yourself, deny your ambitions, deny your goals, deny whatever it is that you want to do in Babylon, your career. Pick up your walking stick and follow after me. You got to walk into the truth. As we received a command from the Father, and now I ask you, Curia, not as though I wrote a fresh commandment or a new commandment to you, but that you have had from the beginning, that we love one another. We love one another. Why does that theme keep coming back? Why do we keep hearing about loving one another, loving one another, loving one another, ahaba one another, as we say in the Abrit? And this is the love, the ahaba, that we walk according to his commandments, plural, commandments. This is the command, singular, that as you have heard from the beginning, you should walk in it. From the beginning, you should walk in it. What was from the beginning? Well, if we go over here to Genesis, the beginning, and we read about this here in chapter 4. Do you remember this question after Habal? You may know him as Abel, unalived his brother. It came to be when they were in the field, and Cain, that is Cain, rose up against Habal, that is Abel, his brother, and unalived him. And Yahuwah said to Cain, where is Abal, your brother? And he, Cain, says, I do not know. Am I my brother's guard? Your translation would say, am I my brother's keeper? Notice he never answered. The Creator never answered him, never answered Cain verbally. Yahuwah said to him, what have you done? The voice of your brother's blood cries out, your brother's dam, the blood, cries out to me from the ground. And now you are cursed from the Arats that has opened its mouth to receive your brother's dam, his blood, from your hand. If you till the ground, it shall no longer yield its strength to you. You shall be a fugitive and a wanderer on the earth. And Cain said to Yahuwah, my punishment is too great to bear. What was it that we heard from the beginning that wasn't spoken? You got to read between the lines. Remember I said that he never answered Cain when he says, I don't know. Am I my brother's keeper? Because Yahuwah asked him, where's your brother? Cain trying to cover up what he did, his transgression, not understanding that Yahuwah sees all things because he doesn't know this. He doesn't know this attribute about Yahuwah, that there is nothing hidden from him. Cain has no idea of the abilities of Yahuwah. But here it is. Yahuwah says, I know what you did. Your brother's blood is crying from the ground. Now, did Cain show love? Did he show ahaba to his brother by taking a stone and destroying his brother's life? So what was Yahuwah saying to him without answering him when he says, I don't know, am I my brother's keeper? All throughout the scripture, that's exactly what he is answering. And then coming into the New Testament, the Brit HaKadash, he shows us that love by saying, yes, you are your brother's keeper. And not only are you your brother's keeper, but you're to tell your brother his fault. But before you can do that, you must know the truth and you must walk in it. You must walk in it. This is why the Messiah says, why are you talking about that little speck in your brother's eye when you don't even take out the plank, the log, the pole that is hanging out of your eye? He's not saying that you can't bring these things up, but first you need to examine yourself. You need to know the truth. You need to know how to rightly divide, rightly handle this word of truth. So then your children will be walking in the truth. Why? Because you're walking in it. And your children, they're going to mimic what they're seeing their parents doing, or their uncle or their aunt doing, or their grandma or their grandpa is doing. Because they see your respect and your fear for Abba Yahuwah. They know that you know something is outside of us that we can't see, but is ever present, and you're carrying yourself as he is ever present, and you know he's ever present, and your children realize grandma or grandpa or mommy or daddy, there's something around us, and they believe it's around us, and it's causing them to act a certain way. But what if those instructions were removed from us? And it wasn't our fault that they were removed. And the only way we knew was what not only was taught to us, but what was written in what we thought was the word of Yahuwah. Because they changed some things. Let me show you the first one. Let's go to the book of Acts. Now, before I read this out of the scriptures, I want to show it to you in the King James Version. Because as I said earlier, any King James Version or something that has been translated near what the King James Version says, because I haven't looked into the Geneva Bible yet. I haven't looked at the Matthew Henry Bible yet. All these other translations, the Cloverdale, all of those, I haven't had a chance to parallel them. I'm going to do that later, but I want to show you what most people say is the authoritative translation of the word, the King James Version 1611 authorized edition, what has been placed in there, and what the predominant of the English speaking world and those who went and proselytized all over the earth was speaking out of this translation. So we're going to go to that book called the Book of Acts. And we're going to go to chapter 15. Now, in chapter 15, we're going to read something here. And it blew my mind when I saw this. Now, you're not going to see it in this until I show you the comparison. When I show you the comparison, you're going to be like, what? Yeah, exactly. And we're going to have to say it like our Aki Al would say, what? Yeah, it's going to be one of those. Okay? So check this out. Starting at verse 20, remember the word that I said unto you, the servant is not greater. Am I reading this? Nope, I'm in the wrong book. I'm in John and I am not in Acts. I'm like, what? That doesn't sound right. Chapter 15. Let's try this again. Starting at verse 19. Therefore, my sentence, my conclusion is this, that we trouble not them, that is the Gentiles, that from among the Gentiles who are turning to Alua Alahim. Okay, these are the Gentiles who are not Yahudim, who are not DNA Yasharal, who are not Hebrews at heart. These are Gentiles. Okay, they weren't raised as Hebrews. So here we're being told, let's not put too much on them at once. These are among the Gentiles who are turning to Alua Alahim, but that we write unto them this, that they abstain from pollutions of idols, polluting themselves with idols, from fornication or adultery or sexual immorality, and from things strangled, and from blood. Okay? This from blood has to do with the dietary laws that a lot of Gentiles say, oh, we're not under the law anymore. But they're still being told, this comes from the law, that you are not to drink blood. You are not to eat food with blood in it. All right? But nonetheless, it says, for Masha of old time in every city, them that preach him, being read in the synagogues every Sabbath day. So these Gentiles who are coming into this truth, who are turning to Alua Alahim, they were just given these introductory commandments. Let us not put too much on these new brethren who are not raised like us. They weren't taught from their youth about the commandments, about the Torah. If they want to know more, they're going to hear the readings of Moses. Okay, because it says here in verse 21, for Moses of old time has in every city, that's in every location, them that preach him. They're reading the laws of Moses. They preach him. Being read in the synagogue. What's a synagogue? A place of assembly, a place where they would hear the word. But when do they hear it? Not on a Sunday. They're not going to read, they're not going to hear the law on no Sunday. They're going to hear it on the Sabbath. So right here we see even the Gentiles, without you being told, without me being told, without our lying pastors and preachers who have been taught to say those things because that's all they know, not their fault. But right here in the word, it's telling us that even the Gentiles who were coming to the Messiah, they would come together on the Sabbath day to hear about the laws of Masha, because nobody was going around at that time, especially amongst those who didn't know the words. They didn't have their own copy. There was no such thing as a printing press. There was no marketplace where you can say, yeah, I like to buy a scroll of the Tanakh. There was no marketplace like that back then. The only ones who handled those words were in the synagogue. They were in the places of worship, in the assemblies, and they would only have one copy of it. And everyone would go there to listen to it on Shabbat. It's the same thing for these Gentiles who were converting into the way, not into Judaism, into the way. All right. So here in verse 24, it says, for as much as we have heard that certain that have went out from us have troubled you with words, subverting your souls, saying you must be circumcised and keep the law, to whom we gave no such commandment. Notice this. Notice what it says here. I don't know if you missed it. For as much as we have heard that certain that went out from us, meaning those of the way, those who believed in the Messiah, have troubled you, those who are turning, these Gentiles who are not Jews, DNA wise, okay, says that they were subverting your souls, causing instability in your thoughts, saying that you must be circumcised, meaning to the men, you got to fulfill the law, you got to go and get snipped, and you are to keep the law. And so the council in Jerusalem is saying, we never gave no such commandment. Now, I want to show you, this is what it says here in the King James Version. Let me read that same passage in the TS 2009. It says the same thing in the Hallelujah Scriptures. Acts chapter 15, verse 24. Since we have heard that some who went out from us have troubled you with words, unsettling your lives, to whom we gave no command. Do you see what is missing here? Let me read it again out of the King Jimmy. What did it say in the King James? Why don't we follow the law anymore? Why were we taught not to follow the law? Look at this argument that is being said, that they said in this translation that wasn't said, but it has been translated and has been given to us this way. Again, King James Version says, for as much as we have heard that certain that went out from us have troubled you with words, subverting your souls, troubling your souls, saying that you must be circumcised and keep the law. This part was never said. You must be circumcised and keep the law. What is said here, for as much as we have heard that certain that went out from us have troubled you with words, subverting your souls, to whom we gave no such commandment. Here, they literally are telling you, in the translation of the King Jimmy, that the council up in Jerusalem said, we never told you Gentiles that you have to keep the law. We never said anything like that. That's what is being said here. We gave no such commandment. TS 2009 says otherwise. Since we have heard that some who went out from us have troubled you with words, unsettling your lives, to whom we gave no command. Now, I want to show you where both of these are spoken of in the New King James Version. Here's the Nelson Study Bible of the NKJV, New King James. We're going to go to the same passage, and I'm going to show you a footnote about this passage, that they actually show you what they did. And I'm going to show you another one after this. Chapter 15 of Acts, verse 24. Verse 24, Acts 15, okay? Verse 24 says this. Since we have heard that some who went out from us have troubled you with words, unsettling your souls, asterisk, saying you must be circumcised and keep the law, to whom we gave no such commandment. The asterisk here in verse 24, let's look for the asterisk. Where is the asterisk in what we're looking at here? Give me a second. Let me clear some space here so I can move this about. Here's the asterisk. Notice what it says here. The NU, I'm going to show you what NU means. The NU text omits saying, you must be circumcised and keep the law. This is what we just read in the TS 2009. It omits, you must be circumcised and keep the law. Remember, the King James Version and this New King James Version have included what was supposed to be omitted. They added saying you must be circumcised and keep the law. They're trying to say that this was the accusation that James and them said that they were to do. He says, we never gave no such commandment. These people added as if James said to keep the law. And he's saying, we never said that. We never told you Gentiles to keep the law. So now what is being taught to all of Christendom? You don't have to keep the law, Gentiles. You don't have to keep the law. But that is not what is being spoken here. And why would they add something that wasn't even supposed to be in the text? Because they wanted you to subvert your mindset. This is nothing but Satan. This is not your pastor or preacher or teacher or anyone that we know of flesh and blood that has caused this to happen or occur. They just put it out there by the will of Satan to say you are no longer to keep the commandments. I'm going to show you another one. Let's go to Acts chapter 21. These are things that are subliminally, when we read these passages or when they're teaching these passages, you do it without thinking because they're already telling you you don't have to keep the law. And I'm showing you that we do need to keep the law and that they added things that shouldn't have been put in there that has caused us to look at scripture in a different understanding. Acts chapter 21, verses 17 to 25. 21, 17 to 25. And it reads, this is out of the New King James Version. And when we had come to Jerusalem, the brethren received us gladly. On the following day, Shaul, that is Paul, went in with us to Jacob, James, and all the elders were present. When we had greeted them, he told in detail those things that Yahuwah had done among the Gentiles. These are the non-Hebrews, through his ministry. And when they heard it, they esteemed Yahuwah. And they said to him, you see, brethren, how many myriads of Yahudim there were who have believed, and they are all zealous for the law. But they have been informed about you, that you teach all the Yahudim, the Jews, who are among the Gentiles to forsake Masha, that is to forsake the Torah, saying that they ought not to circumcise their children, nor to walk according to the customs. What then? Asterisk, what then? The assembly must certainly meet, that they will hear that you have come. Therefore, do what we all tell you. We have 4 men who have taken a vow. Take them and be purified with them, and pay their expenses, so that they may have their heads shaved, taking the Nazirite vow, and that all may know that those things that they were informed concerning you are nothing, but that you yourselves also walk orderly and keep the law. But concerning the Gentiles who believe, we have written and decided, asterisk, that they should observe no such thing, except that they should keep themselves from things offered to idols, from blood, and from things strangled, from sexual immorality. Now, notice here it had, again, an asterisk in verse 25. Let me see, it says that they did what? That they should observe no such thing. Okay, let's look down here. Verse 25, here's the asterisk, is telling us the NU, again, I'm going to show you what NU means. The NU text omits that they should observe no such thing. So how should this be written? Starting from where it says that in verse 25, where you see the asterisk, to thing. Okay? So we pick back up from except. All right? But concerning the Gentiles who believe, we have written and decided, except that they should keep themselves from things offered to idols, from blood, from things strangled, and from sexual immorality. Okay? But concerning the Gentiles who believe, we have written and decided that they should observe no such thing. All right? That they should observe no such thing. They never said that. They never said that they shouldn't keep the law. They wanted them to start off with these three simple things. Why are we being told not to keep the law? Both of these passages, they have added that we're not to keep the law. This is how we all believed. This is how we didn't understand what we were reading. This goes against, and this is why, let me show you what the NU stands for. Let me take you there, because I'm sure there's some of you saying, well, you said you were going to show us. Yep, I'm going to show you before I forget. King James, New King James footnotes. Here we see NU text. First, let's read the top here. Where significant variations occur in the New Testament Greek manuscripts, textual notes are classified as follows. NU text. These variations from the traditional text generally represent the Alexandrian or Egyptian type of text described previously in the New Testament text. They are found in the critical text published in the 26th edition of the Nestle Greek New Testament, N, and in the United Bible Society's 3rd edition, U, hence the acronym NU text. The other one would be the M text. This symbol indicates points of variations in the majority text from the traditional text, as also previously discussed in the New Testament text. It should be noted that M stands for whatever reading is printed in the published Greek New Testament according to the majority text, whether supported by overwhelmingly strong or only a divided majority textual tradition. So, when we go back here and we look at what it says there that was omitted, it was omitted in the NU text. When we go back to the book of Acts, that I showed you where they added things in the majority text. Why does the majority text say that we told them not to keep the commandments, or that we told them to follow the commandments? They're scaring them away from keeping the commandments. That's what they're doing. They're telling everybody, we're not to keep it. We gave them no such command. Again, verse 24, asterisk, saying, you must be circumcised and keep the law, to whom we gave no such commandment. We gave no such commandment. And so now we have people, just like you and me, who came out of this lie, where we have been taught you are not to keep the commandments. But I showed you in 1 John chapter, what was it? First John chapter 3, about how we are to keep the commandments. I showed you in Matthew chapter 15 and chapter 19, how we're to keep the commandments. And you all know that there's many more, like John chapter 14, verse 15, if you love me, keep my commandments. Or in Matthew chapter 5, where he says, do not think that I came to destroy the law or the prophets, but I did not come here to destroy, but to fulfill. And then it goes on and says that he didn't, if anybody breaks the least of these commandments and teaches men so, that they shall be considered the least in the kingdom of heaven. But those who do and teach the commandments, they shall be called great in the heavens. It's talking about judgment day. It's not meaning that you're getting in because you're considered the least in the kingdom. It's talking about judgment day. Those who are the least are getting put out. We have been fed lies. We have been fed lies, and these people continue to teach the lie. I want to show you something here. Again, let's go to Acts chapter 22, reading out of the scriptures. Acts 22, verse 12. What does it say there? Now this, just to give you a little backstory, was when Shaul had his conversion on the road to Damascus, and he was told to go to a house. So we start at verse 11. It says, and as I could not see, talking about Shaul, aka Paul, because of the esteem of that light, the light of Yahusha, being led by the hand of those who were with me, I came into Damascus. And a certain Hananiah, a dedicated man, according to the Torah, a dedicated man, according to the law, being well spoken of by all the Yahudim dwelling there. This man is dedicated according to the law. This man was keeping law. Why would Yahusha tell him to go to Hananiah, who is keeping law? Wouldn't he send him to somebody? Wouldn't he send the apostle Paul to someone who's no longer keeping the law, as we've been taught that we're no longer to keep the law, to show the emphasis that the law has been done away with? Why is the Messiah sending Paul to a person who is keeping law? It makes no sense if the law has been done away with. Let's go to Acts chapter 23, and we're going to read verses 1 through 5. Notice this. And Shaul, looking intently at the council, said, men, brethren, I have lived in all great consciousness before Yahuwah Elohim until this very day. And the high priest Hananiah commanded those who stood by him to strike Shaul, Paul, on the mouth. Then Shaul said to him, Yahuwah Elohim is going to strike you, you whitewashed wall. And do you sit judging me according to the law? And do you command me to be struck contrary to the law? And those who stood by said, do you revile the high priest of the mighty one? And Shaul said, I did not know, brethren, that he was the high priest, for it has been written, quote, you shall not speak evil of the ruler of your people. Why would Shaul, Paul, who everyone's saying that we don't have to keep the law anymore, this is what he's teaching, right? Why is he quoting a passage from the Torah, specifically from Exodus chapter 22, verse 28? You see it right there. This is where he's quoting it from. And he says, excuse me, I'm sorry. I didn't know he was the high priest. We're not supposed to speak evil of our leaders. Well, if the law didn't matter anymore, why is he quoting it? If the law has been done away with, why is he quoting it? Doesn't make sense, does it? Let's go to Romans. Romans chapter 8. Again, this is all passages from Paul, from Shaul. Romans chapter 8, 7 to 17. 7 to 17. And it reads, because the mind of the flesh is in enmity or separation towards Alua Elohim, the mighty of mighty ones. For it does not subject itself, the mind of the flesh does not subject itself to the Torah of Alua Elohim. It would not bring itself to be under the authority of the law of our mighty one. Neither indeed is it able. The law, the mind of the flesh, someone who is in the flesh, someone who has not dedicated themselves to Yahuwah, cannot walk in the law. They don't even have the mind to do it. Look at a lot of us before we came into the truth. We didn't walk in the law. We didn't walk in the Torah. We didn't walk in the light. The Torah is light after all. The word is light. The Messiah said he is the light. He is the word manifested. Do you see all the symbolism, how it's connected to the Mashiach? And those who are in the flesh are unable to please Alua Elohim. So if you're in the flesh, you cannot subject yourself to the law of Elohim, and therefore you cannot please Elohim because you are not keeping the laws of Elohim. But you are not in the flesh, speaking of us, but in the Ruach, if indeed the Ruach of Elohim dwells in you or abides or lives in you. And if anyone does not have the Ruach of the Messiah, this one is not his. There's a lot of people who think that they have the spirit of our Messiah. No, they have the spirit of Christ. They don't have the spirit of Messiah. You may say, well, what's the difference? The difference is one is teaching to keep the law, and the other one is teaching that the law has been done away with. And if the Messiah is in you, the body is truly dead on account of transgressing the law. Let's call it for what it is. Every time we see the word sin, I'm going to replace it with what the word sin actually means: transgressing the law. Okay? But the spirit is life on account of righteousness. On account of what? Righteousness. How does one get righteousness? From the Messiah. And how does one get righteousness from the Messiah? By keeping the law. What makes a person righteous? Let me read it again to you because you probably just forgot. Let's go back to Luke chapter 1. There was in the days of Herodes, that is Herod, the king of Yahudah, a certain priest named Zechariah. This is John the Baptist's dad, of the division of Abiyah, and his wife, the daughters of Aaron, her name was Elisheba. This is again John's mother. John's dad, John's mother. And they both righteous before Alua Elohim. They were blameless. How? Why? Because they were walking in all the commandments and righteousnesses of Yahuwah. So again, how does one walk in righteousness? On account of righteousness, they got to be doing the law. But the spirit is life on account of righteousness. And if the spirit of him who raised Yahusha from the dead dwells in you, he who raised the Messiah from the dead shall also give life to your mortal bodies through his Ruach, his spirit that's dwelling in you. So then, brethren, we are not debtors to the flesh, to live according to the flesh. Notice that, to live according to the flesh. What does it mean to live according to the flesh? To live according to the flesh is in the account of sin. Anyone who is transgressing the law is walking according to the flesh. For if you live according to the flesh, you are going to die. That's not a maybe. That's 100%. Why are you going to die if you're walking or living according to the flesh? Because you are breaking Torah. You're breaking law. But if by the Spirit you put to death the deeds of the body. The deeds. What's the deeds? The works. The works of the flesh. You shall live. So what are the works of the flesh? Breaking the law. Breaking the law. And all you have to do is think it. You all know this. All you have to do is think it and you've broken the law. He who has looked at a woman with lust in his eyes has already committed the act of adultery without even physically doing it. If your eye causes you to transgress the law, pluck it out. Cast it away from you. It is better for one of your members to burn than for your whole body to burn. That's how serious the law is, right? So it says, for if you live according to the flesh, you are going to die. But if you live by the Ruach, you put to death the deeds of the body, you shall live. For as many as are led by the Ruach of Alua Elohim, these are the sons of Alua Elohim. These are the sons. Wow. For you did not receive the spirit of bondage, that is enslavement again to fear, but you received the spirit of adoption, by whom we cry out, Abba. We know that this was translated because Abba means father. He's not saying father, father. This book was translated probably into what we know as Latin. By whom we cry out, Abba, Father. The Spirit, the Ruach himself, bears witness with our Ruach that we are children of Alua Elohim. And if we are children, also heirs, truly heirs of Alua Elohim and co-heirs with the Messiah. If indeed we suffer with him, in order that we also be exalted together. We be exalted together. How powerful. How powerful. So it is the Ruach, the Spirit. If we walk in the Spirit. But how do we walk in the Spirit? Let's go to John 14. What does it say? But the Helper, the set apart Spirit, whom the Father shall send in my name, he shall teach you. He shall teach you all and remind you of all that I have said to you. So it's the Spirit who's going to teach us how to walk. It's the Spirit who's going to teach us how to walk in the Spirit, how to live in the Spirit. Chapter 15, verse 26, and when the Helper comes, that is the Spirit, whom I shall send from the Father, the Spirit of the truth, who comes from the Father, he shall bear witness of me. He shall bear witness of me. Same thing he says here in chapter 14. Remember we said this, and we're going to read it. Verse 15, if you love me, you shall guard, you shall keep my commandments. And I shall ask the Father, and he shall give you another helper to stay, abide, to dwell, or live in you forever, the Spirit of the truth, whom the world is unable to receive, because it does not see him or know him. But you know him, for he lives, he stays, he abides, he dwells with you, and shall be in you. You see all the connections. You see how they lied to us. They added things to show us that the law has been done away with. We didn't give no such command that you have to keep the laws and be circumcised. We know that circumcision is nothing. We know that uncircumcision is nothing. But to keep the commandments of Elohim, that's what matters. That's what matters. Same thing that we read in Ecclesiastes chapter 12, the very last chapter. I think it was chapter 12. Yep. Verses 9 to 14. What is the conclusion of the matter? That we're to fear Alua Elohim and we are to keep his commandments. That's the conclusion of the matter. That same conclusion of the matter is what we find as the conclusion in the last book, in the last chapter, about those who keep the commandments. Verse 14. Baruch are those, there's the action word, doing, not just believing, doing his commands. That is, doing his commandments, so that the authority, the power shall be theirs unto the tree of life. You're not going to reach out. You're not going to be able to reach out and grab onto that fruit, which is the healing of the nations, of the people, if you ain't keeping the commandments. I don't care what you think you believe. I don't care what you think your translation or your interpretation is. We're just going by book. In fact, you're not even entering in through the gates of the city to even get to see the tree of life, because you're not even going to be able to enter into the city to even see it. Those gates is New Jerusalem. As I say, and I'll say it again every time I talk about those gates, there are 12 gates. You can read about it right here in the book of Revelation, chapter 21. And each one of those gates, not one of those gates has been given the name Christian. Not one of those gates has been given the word church. Not one of those gates has been given the New Testament believer only. There is no Gentile gate. All 12 gates are the 12 tribes of Yasharal. We, you and I don't care what your paint job is, the color of your skin is. I don't care your background. I don't care what you have done. I don't care what transgression of the law you have committed. If you will obey the commandments and believe in the testimony of the Messiah, you shall be saved if you endure to the end, and you shall become one of the 12 tribes. You will be adopted in to one of the 12, so that you may enter into the New Jerusalem. Nowhere do you find anywhere in the Bible that we must become Christians, that we must believe as Christianity has taught us. Let me show you, it says what we're to be. Ephesians chapter 2, verse 11. Therefore, remember that you, Gentiles, once Gentiles, nations in the flesh, DNA. You're not Hebrew by blood. You're not an Israelite by blood. You are a Gentile by blood, in the flesh. You are called the uncircumcision by what is called, or that is by those who are the circumcision made by the flesh by hands. Talking about those of us who are Yahudim, the true Jews. We're calling everybody else who is not a Yahudim a Gentile, okay? Or I should say Yashra'al, that are not Yashra'al are considered Gentiles. And so it goes on and says that at that time you were without the Messiah. Why was the Gentiles without the Messiah? Because the agreement, the contract, the marriage vows was not to any other group but to Yashra'al. It was to the children of Yasharal. You might call them Israel. Yashra'al are the only ones who made or has a covenant, an agreement with the Messiah. So this is why it says, and at that time, you Gentiles were without, or you were separated from the Messiah, excluded from the citizenship of who? Yashra'al. You had no citizenship with Israel. You were strangers. You were foreigners from the agreements. So you can't be a part of the promise. You had no expectation. You were without the mighty one in the world. But now, since the Messiah Yahusha came, you who were once afar off, you have been now brought near by his blood, what he did on the tree. For he is our peace, he's our shalom, who has made both one, the Gentiles and the Yashraelites. So you must become Israel. You must become Israel. This is why it says here, verse 19, so then you are no longer strangers, you are no longer foreigners, but fellow citizens of the set apart ones and members of the household of Allah Elohim. But for that to take effect in your life, you must keep the commandments. No, you're not going to be perfect. None of us is perfect. No, the commandments don't save you. No one is justified by the law. This is evident. This is true. But the one who does them shall live because he's doing them. You must keep the commandments, Mishpachah, and those of you who are listening. The law is very, very, very important. So that's what I wanted to share today. I'm going to turn back on the chat to see if there's any questions or comments or anybody want to add something in the comments. I'll read some of the questions and some of the comments. I apologize if I don't get to your question or comment. I want to thank all of you for being here. It's so wonderful to have all of you here. So we're going to spend about another hour, and then after this, we're going to go over to TikTok, and we're going to have open mic nights tonight. I'd like to hear from the Mishpachah. Definitely we'll hope to hear from our Cody Shannon. Lachey, you said that your Geneva says the same thing as the KJV. See, that's terrible, right? Great to see that you're still here, Cody Shannon. All praises to the Most High Yahuwah, Ahava. All praises to him. Shalom, Cody Tracy. Tracy Rucker. BT Reform, you said the Sefer also says the same thing as the KJV. Yeah, that's why I say it's a glamorized KJV that just happens to have the name of the Father and the Son and has changed some things around. Are we still expected to keep all 613 commandments or just the main 10? So great to see you here, D. Osaka. First, to answer your question, no, we are not to keep all 613. For one, some of the 613 don't apply to you. And there are some of the 613 that no longer applies to any of us, specifically those that have to do with sacrificing and offerings. We know that that's not for something for us to do anymore because there is no temple. There is no longer a Levitical priesthood. So a lot of those offerings and things that were to be done before the altar are not to be done. That's a lot of commandments that are no longer that applies to us. Okay. But those laws that have been told to us spiritually have meaning to us. Okay. When it has to do with the temple, when it has to do with the offering, there are spiritual personal applications that can be applied to our life that has to do with those commandments that they had to keep before that we now observe in a spiritual sense. Let me see here. BRRRT4246. I have heard you disagree with Friday sundown to Saturday sundown before. Can you help me how this was revealed, please? So 4246, great for you to be here. I'll be more than happy to answer your question on that. So what we have come to understand, first of all, we've been taught a tradition of men that a day begins in evening. Okay. Now that's the first thing that one needs to remove out of their understanding to even see the true Sabbath. First, you got to know when a day begins. Because if you think that the day begins at evening because of what we have been taught by those who not only translated books, but also who teach out of them and who teach us customs that were customary to other cultures, like what happened. So let me give you a little history that goes back a little bit, okay? In fact, let me do this. I want to show you before I read this, I'm going to bring up a question. And I want you to see it with me, okay? So let me bring this up here. I'm going to search on DuckDuckGo. When did the Jews begin to keep the lunar calendar? Question. The Jewish calendar, which is a lunisolar calendar, has its origins in ancient times, with its structure being established around the time of Hillel II in 359 of the current era. However, the practice of observing lunar months likely dates back to the biblical period when months were determined by the sighting of the new moon. Okay, let's see if it tells us a little more. Because there is something that it doesn't tell us that it should have told us, but I don't see if it's going to tell us. And this one isn't telling me. So now I got to rephrase it. Did the Jews begin to follow the lunar calendar in Babylon? Question mark. Let's see what it says. Generating. Yes, the Jews began to follow a lunar calendar during their Babylonian exile. So what were they following before? That's what we don't ask, right? That was influenced by the Babylonian lunisolar calendar. This adoption included the names of the months. There was no name for months that have Babylonian origins. You mean like Tammuz, the month of Tammuz? Yes. And are still used in the Hebrew calendar today. Okay? So why do I bring this up? Because again, we must go back to when this custom began, this tradition began. The keeping of the moon, and that is the beginning of the day. They use an excuse out of Genesis chapter 1, and then what they learned from the Babylonians at the sighting of the moon. Well, the sighting of the moon of what they call a new moon, that little crescent, that little sliver, 4269. I think that was your 4 numbers at the end of your BRRRT. The sighting of the moon happens at evening. And so when they would see the sliver, the crescent, they would say this is the beginning of a new day. And they use Genesis chapter 1 to say that this is how a day goes. Now, verse 5 says, and the mighty one called the light day, and the darkness he called night, and the evening and the morning were the first day. Right there, because they say, well, it says that evening came first. Before there was light, there was dark. Yeah, but evening is not dark. Didn't think about that one, right? And only is evening not dark because remember, he called the darkness night. He didn't call the darkness evening. If darkness was the first thing, then why didn't it say evening? It didn't say evening was upon the face of the deep. It said darkness was on the face of the deep. And then it goes on and says, and the evening and the morning were the first day. Why didn't it say the darkness was the first part of the day? Just like how the Catholics want us to believe that the day begins at midnight, at pitch black darkness. So not only do the Catholics have it wrong, which the world is swayed by her teachings with the drinking of her cup, drunk after her teachings, that they believe the time to be the next day begins at midnight. But even the so-called Jewish folks believe that the day starts at the evening. But here's the dilemma. If you look at this, and I want you to look at it carefully, okay? You already believe that a day begins in the evening, which is wrong. It says, and the evening and the morning were the first day. So wait a minute. Why didn't it say evening and to the next evening were the first day? And then the second day should have said evening to the next evening was the second day. But it doesn't say that, right? These are the same people who like to go to Leviticus chapter 23, and they said, see, Sabbath is supposed to be kept from evening to evening, but you don't even see evening to evening in Genesis chapter 1. But wherever your argument fits, you want to use it. So Leviticus chapter 23, verse 32, they like to use this to say, this is why we know that a day begins in the evening. It shall be unto you a Sabbath of rest. You shall afflict your beings in the 9th day of the month at even or at evening. From evening unto evening, you shall celebrate, or that is to keep your Sabbath. But this isn't talking about all Sabbaths. This is talking about one particular day. This is why it tells you in the 9th day of the month. What month are we talking about? We're talking about the 7th month. And Yahuwah spoke unto to Moses, saying, also on the 10th day of this 7th month, there shall be a day of atonement, and it shall be a set apart assembly unto you. Notice that it says on the 10th day of the 7th month. Well, when we go down here to 32, it's going to give you the complete picture. It shall be unto you a rest. What's going to be a rest? The day of atonement, Yom HaKippurim, is going to be a day of rest, not a weekly Sabbath. This is, it shall be unto you. You shall treat it like a Sabbath of rest. You shall afflict your soul, and you're going to start at the 9th day of the month at evening. So the 9th day in the evening, you start your fast. And you complete it to the next day, which would be the 10th day. Hence why also on the 10th day of this 7th month, there shall be a day of atonement. So it goes on from the day prior, the ninth day at evening, which is going to take you from evening of the 9th to the evening of the 10th. You shall celebrate your Sabbath. This is all this is talking about, but it's not talking about the beginning of the day, nor the beginning of a Sabbath. So how do we know when the day begins? Well, let's go back to Genesis chapter 1. Genesis chapter 1 shows you right here, even in the King James Version, if you notice carefully, notice what it says here in verse 5 about day 1. What's the last thing that is being mentioned as a marker of the day? The ending of the day is morning. Even if you want to believe that the day begins in the evening, which it doesn't, because between evening and morning you have darkness, there is no part of the day, because you go from evening and then it goes to night, and then from night it goes to sunrise, which would be morning. Okay, so you're missing a whole nother part of the day. But nonetheless, notice the day ends at morning. It ends at morning, so it goes to the next morning on the second day. So from morning to morning is how we are to measure our days. It's from sunrise to sunrise, not evening to evening, as we have been taught. Because again, you don't see evening to evening. The evening is not the ending of the day. The morning is the ending of the day. Remember, notice it says evening and the morning were the first day. At the very end of what is considered a day is at the point of what is called morning. And then the very next day, by understanding this, means that you are now entered into another day at that morning, and you're going to the very next morning. And at that moment of that morning, the inflection point takes you to the next day, which would be the third day from that sunrise at morning. So let me show you a diagram that I like to show when we're talking about this to give you a visual illustration. You'll see here in this diagram what consists of a 24-hour period, okay? Here's the word evening, which would be right here at this line. That would be dusk, okay? And here's morning, which was at this line here would be dawn. It's the rising and the setting, okay? Now, if we understand and the day goes like this, okay? Right? If we believe by what we're just reading, as we've been taught, that the day begins in the evening and it's morning, then this is what's happening. Here's evening, you're going to bed, you wake up, here's morning. Where's the part that you work? Remember, the Messiah said that there's 12 hours in a day to work. That's this portion. That's what you're missing. You see, this is missing a very important, what we would call a prepositional phrase. It says here at the end of verse 5, and the evening and the morning were the first day. Let me show you how this should have been written. Verse 5, and Alua Elohim called the light day. This is out of the scriptures, TS 2009. And the darkness he called night. And there came to be, this is the prepositional phrase, it came to be evening, and there came to be morning one day. When it uses the word came to be right here, it's letting you know that something preceded evening because it came to be evening. So what came to be before it came to be evening? What was it before it came to be evening? It was all of this day portion. It was the work that had to be done during the day. When he said, let there be light, bam, light appeared. There was no sun, there was no moon, there was no stars yet. He was that light on the first 3 days, the first day, the second day, and the third day. The sun and the moon and the stars didn't regulate time until the fourth day of the week. Before then, he was regulating time with himself. He was that light on the first 3 days. This is parallel to before he came. Before he came in the flesh, he was that light. And what was his light? It was the word. What was the word? The word manifested. It was light. It was the word. It's what we know as the Torah. The Torah is known as the light in the book of Psalms. Your law is light. So back to this physical understanding, your day begins at sunrise. You get up, you go to work, you use all of this precious resource, you get back home, kick off your shoes, play with the dog, play with the kids, eat your dinner, take a shower, or whichever direction you want to do it, take a shower, then eat your dinner, and now it's time to relax, and now it's time for you to go to bed. You sleep, you wake up just before the crack of dawn, you get yourself together, you walk out that house, and you use that precious resource again to go to work. It's the next day. And then you do it all over again. So this is what came to be before evening. Work was done, and then it came to be evening. And then you slept, and it came to be morning. That's the finish of a full day. Soon as that sun comes up over that horizon, it's starting another day. You go out the door with the sun. Everything is back up. Everything is running. All the birds are chirping. The birds are flying. The animals are out. People are working. And then you start all over again. So now that is the beginning of the day, okay? And you'll find that to be true if you read Exodus chapter 16. Now, Exodus chapter 16 also tells you how they kept the counting method. Now, I'm not going to go over that right now, but to answer your question, 42, 49, what we know as the Sabbath relates to the sun, the S-U-N. I'm going to take you to a book that you may not be familiar with. I wasn't familiar with this book when I started studying the calendar. It is called the Book of Jubilees, Yobalim. Book of Jubilees, chapter 2, tells us something very interesting when it comes to how we are to find things as it pertains to the months, the days, the years, and also the feast days. So here in Jubilees, chapter 2, verses 8 and 9, it says this. Jubilees is also known as the Little Genesis. Verse 8. And on the fourth day, he, Yahuwah, created the sun and the moon and the stars, and set them in the firmament of the Shama, of the heaven, to give light upon all the Arats, the earth, and to rule over the day and to rule over the night. Where am I at here? Rule over the night and divide the light from the darkness. Okay. Now notice verse 9. And Alua Elohim appointed the sun. He appointed the sun, the S-U-N, not the moon, the sun, to be a great sign on the earth. Notice what the sun is used for. He appointed the sun for days. He appointed the sun for Sabbaths. He appointed the sun for months, not the moon. He appointed the sun for this, the measurement of a month. He appointed the sun for our feast days, our Moadim, our high days, not the moon. Okay? He appointed the sun for our years. What is the beginning and the ending of years? He appointed the sun also for Sabbath of years, or what we would call Shabua of years, 7-year periods. He also appointed the sun for Yobalim years, which is 50-year periods, or actually 49-year, and then that 50th is the Jubilee, which is also the beginning of another Jubilee count. And for all the seasons of the years, he appointed the sun. What are the seasons of the years? Your spring, your summer, your fall, your winter. It's the sun that dictates what's going to happen when it's cold, when it's hot, when it's fall, when it's summer, and all of that. The sun does this, not the moon. Okay, so that's key. So to find the Sabbath, you must know how to find how we are to use the sun, because the Creator appointed the sun to be a great sign on the earth. So the sun is supposed to show us or give us some indication about a day. Well, we just talked about when a day begins, when the sun comes up over that horizon. That's the beginning of a day. So how do we find when the Sabbath is? Well, this takes us to the great sign. The great sign happens 4 times a year. Now we're going to go to the book of Enoch, where it talks about this great sign. Chapter 72. Let every word be established by 2 or 3 witnesses. So now we're going to the book of Enoch, where it's going to shed some light about the sun, okay, and how it is used for bringing in what we know as the year. Verse 4 of chapter 72, it says, and first goes out this great luminary named the sun, not the moon, the sun. And his circumference is like the circumference of the heaven, and he is quite filled with illuminating and heating fire. The chariot, or the locomotion on what he ascends, the wind drives, the solar winds, right? And the sun goes down from the heaven, or appears to go down, as we would say, from the vantage point of a person, and returns through the north in order to reach the east. This information right here tells us that the earth is flat. Most people don't know this, but that's for another teaching. Again, it says how the sun goes down from the heaven and returns through the north in order to reach the east, and so is guided that he comes to the appropriate portal, to the appropriate window or opening door, and shines in the face of the heaven. In this way, he rises in the first month. Notice what we're talking about. This is the first day of the first month in the great portal. That is the 4th of the 6 portals in the east. And in that 4th portal, from where the sun rises in the first month, are the 12 window openings from that which precedes a flame when they are opened in their season. And now these 12 window openings has to do with weather patterns, okay? But verse 8 goes on and says, when the sun rises in the heaven, he comes out through that fourth portal 30 sunrises or 30 mornings. What do we read in Genesis chapter 1 in verse 5? And there came to be evening, and there came to be morning, day one or first day. Okay, so a day begins right here again, 30 sunrises, 30 mornings. It's telling you the same thing that we just read in Genesis. So it says it does it in succession without a break. It never breaks. And it goes on and says, and sets accurately in the fourth portal in the west of the heaven. So just to the opposite, from where it rises, it sets in the same portal on the other side of the horizon at evening. And during this period, the day becomes daily longer. So this lets you know it's talking about from spring because it's taking us to the summer. And the nights are becoming shorter to the 30th sunrise or 30th morning. On that day, the day is longer than the night by 9 parts, and the day amounts exactly to 10 parts, and the night to 8 parts. So there are 18 parts altogether, and out of that, the sun takes 10 parts, and the night takes 8 parts. This is during the springtime. And the sun rises in the fourth portal and sets in the fourth and returns to the fifth portal for of the east, 30 sunrises. So this is another 30 sunrise. Now we're up to 60 days. And it rises from it and sets in the fifth portal. And then the day becomes longer by 2 parts and amounts to now 11 parts. Remember, it was 10 parts here, right? It said that that the day amounts to exactly 10 parts and the night was 8 parts. So now we're reading, and it says here that the day becomes longer by 2 parts to the amount of 11 parts, okay? And the night becomes shorter to the amount of 7 parts. So 11 plus 7 is still 18. But now more is towards the sun and less towards the night. So this is why the night is getting shorter. And it returns and rises in the east and enters into the sixth portal and rises and sets in the sixth portal for 31 mornings. Now here's another 31 mornings. So we got 30 plus 30 plus 31. Every season has 91 days. 91 times 4, since there's 4 seasons, brings us to 364 days. That is a complete year on Yahuwah's calendar. Now, notice that it said something here in this verse 13 that I have underlined. It says that the sun sets in the sixth portal, and it does this for 31 sunrises or mornings on account of its sign. What sign could that be at the end of 31 days? Remember, 91 days. Remember, I was saying, again, there was 30 days. Okay, where is it here? 30 sunrises or 30 mornings. All right, this is at the beginning of the first month. The second month, again, 30 mornings or 30 sunrises. And then the third month, 31 mornings or 31 sunrises. So if you add the 30 plus 31, you get 91 days. Each season is 91 days. So what is the sign at the end of the season of spring, which will occur in 91 days from the beginning of the year? That sign, my friend, is called the summer solstice. The summer solstice, if you go back 91 days, it brings you to the first day of the year, what we know as the spring equinox. The spring equinox, as we're told in the book of Dead Sea, the Dead Sea Scrolls, I'm going to show you. It talks about how the first day of the year is on a first day on a particular day of the week. To the master song of the Holocaust of the first, that is a set apart offering. That's what the Holocaust means here. Okay, not a Holocaust of somebody dying. Okay, like we've been told by these people who want to say, oh, we had a Holocaust. What they're saying is by saying the word Holocaust that they were offerings to the Creator. Anyways, don't even get me started on those people. To the master, song of the Holocaust of the first Sabbath on the what? Fourth of the first month. So here, these people who compiled what we know today as the Dead Sea Scrolls, they're telling us the first day of the year and the first Sabbath of the year is on the fourth day of the first month. So if the Sabbath, which we know is the seventh day, happens on the fourth day of the first month, then all we have to do is backtrack to find out, well, what was the first day of the first month if the Sabbath is the fourth day of the first month? Let me show you what I'm talking about so I don't confuse you. This is a long explanation, but I have to share this because it's the only way that it's going to make sense. Okay. Let me bring up our website. For those of you who are interested, we do have a website, and the website is called Ambassadors of YAH. There you can find our calendar. I want to thank those who helped put the calendar together and who put it on the website. So this is our website, okay? And when you go to the top here, you're going to come across where it says Yahuwah's calendar. That's going to bring you to this page. If you scroll down, you go down a little bit. First, it tells you where we're at today. Today's the second month of the 8th day of the month. Today is the 6th day of the week, okay? Which means tomorrow is Sabbath. Here's our calendar. I'm going to blow it up so you can see what we were just reading. All right. First day of the month. Kadash 1 is the first month. There you see where it has the number faded, the number 4, number 3, number 2, number 1. Number 1, that day occurred on what we know as the spring equinox. That's the great sign on the earth. That happened or occurred on the pagan day, 20th of March. So if the spring equinox is the first day, remember the first Sabbath of the month is on the fourth day of the first month. That's what we read here. This is fragment number 4Q400, okay? Fragment number 4Q400 of the Dead Sea Scrolls. To the master of the song of the Holocaust of the first Sabbath on the fourth of the first month. On the fourth of the first month. This is Shabbat. How do we find that? Because the first day of the year happens on spring equinox, which means after the spring equinox, 4 days from the spring equinox brings us to our first Sabbath of the year. This year, the spring equinox happened on a pagan day, Friday. Okay? So 4 days later would bring our Sabbath to a Monday, which is tomorrow. This is the true calendar. It's based off of the sun. I just showed you how we got all of this. Now it's up to you to look into this matter. Okay? There's so much evidence to this, but this is why they didn't want us to know this true calendar. This is why they didn't want us to have the book of Enoch anymore. They didn't want us to have the book of Jubilees anymore. And they sure didn't know that the Dead Sea Scrolls were going to be unearthed in 1945, which is a very recent thing in terms of the time that we're living in. 1945 was just a few years ago. There was some of you who are probably listening to me right now who was a baby or who was probably even walking around and knew yourself at 1945 when these Dead Sea Scrolls were that came about. So this is how we know when the Sabbath is. It is not Friday evening to Saturday evening. And I hope that makes sense to you. If you have any more questions about it, continue to come back. We have calendar studies periodically. And I would be more than happy to share more with you as you come in and partake with us. All right. Yes, 4246. You said you do feel that we should see the same clarity in Genesis, Dead Sea Scrolls, original language in Genesis 1:1. Yes. Now, I don't know if you're saying that you don't see that in the Dead Sea Scrolls, or you're looking for that in the Dead Sea Scroll, you got to remember a lot of the fragments and the parchments that we do have that is left over or that has been revealed, because I believe that there are some that they have kept from us that they don't want us to see. But what has been given to us, Yahuwah wanted us to see that and to retrieve that and to get that. And here it is now, we being that generation that is alive and well right now, we're getting ready to see all the things that is spoken of about one generation that shall see this time that no other generation shall ever see. And it's the same generation that, as it says in Daniel chapter 12, verse 4, that in the last days many shall run to and fro all throughout the earth, and knowledge shall increase. Knowledge has increased in this particular generation, and is growing at an exponential rate right now with AI intelligence. And so as we're coming to the Tower of Babel, digitally speaking, once again, instead of Yahuwah splitting up the people and confusing us as he did at the tower, this time he's coming to judge the world. Because if he doesn't come and judge the world, he says that no flesh shall be saved. A person can take that two ways. Either that we totally annihilate ourselves to where he has to come and stop us from, literally unaliving mankind from existing, and an extinction level event, ELE, as they would say, or transhumanism, which is what I believe is what's going to happen. That the original design of Adam's kind is going to get what these transhumanists call a model upgrade. It's going to be the promise of everlasting life by the technology of Lucifer, by the technology of Halal, his real name. And so the only ones who are going to get access and privy to this life extension technology is you have to take the mark. Now, all that being said, the Dead Sea Scrolls had to be revealed at the moment that it was supposed to be revealed for this generation, for us to understand the calendar. Because with this calendar, what's going to happen is we're going to get thrusted out into the wilderness during the time of the tribulation. And we, those of us who are in the know, are still going to be keeping the calendar. You can't do that with the Gregorian calendar. You can't do that with the Jewish Hebrew calendar. You can't do that with the lunisolar calendar. You can't do that with people who are looking at the sliver of the moon calendar. And you sure can't do this with people who are keeping Friday evening to Saturday evening Sabbath type of calendar either. The only ones who are going to know how and when we are on what day and what month is those who know how to read the shadow of the sun, making its sundial with a stick, with a stone, or with carrying, if you happen to have it, your calendar beads. So that is the gist of the calendar. Okay. All right. Any other questions? Any other questions or comments? Let me stand up. Shoshana, great to see you here, Cody. Hector, great to see you here, my aunt. Okay, so speaking of, while we're waiting for other comments or questions, um, those of you who are going to be keeping the voluntary fast, we are going to start the day after Sabbath, and it starts at sunrise. Okay. And again, it's up to you how long you go. It's between you and Abba Yahuwah. This is not a competition. It has to do with you removing things out of your life, things that are displeasing to Abba Yahuwah, things to where you want to hear more of his word in your Ruach. This is why we are fasting. This is why we are fasting. This is why we're Zooming. Michael, you say, I live in North Ireland, so when would the day start for me? Okay, so people who live in these northern latitudes like yourself, Michael, like we have people that live in Alaska, and the closer you get to the Arctic Circle during the summertime, you're going to see the sun never set, right? And then you have those that are south of the equator where they have longer nights, and it's going to be vice versa. So what I would suggest for those of you, while you have the ability, is to study out the sun shadows where you live, because that's going to tell you what it's like normally. Because see, where you guys live is not where we're supposed to be living. Nobody should be living up that north. But again, men have migrated all over the earth. So we have people that are keeping time from different areas. But nonetheless, we're in a time right now where you can use this technology in your favor to study out the movement of the shadow of the sun in your area throughout the year. If you're a very serious student, you're going to do that for yourself. Okay, so you know what time of the year, what time of the season it is, because again, you, just like the rest of us, no matter where you live on this earth, you need to use the sun to mark out your days. All right. So the sun is going to come around, it's going to hit certain geographical locations, even if you're still seeing the sun in the sense of, and even in Ireland, I don't think you guys have it where the sun never sets, even in the during the summer solstice, but you do get longer days, correct, Michael? Okay, yeah. So, being that you still have sunrises and sunsets, you'll be able to still figure out what time of the season and what day of the month you are on and the month of the year by studying right now with the calendar that we have to make geographical markings of where the sun is at this time of the year. So you have something to reference throughout the year. Stephen, Aki Jimmy, you mentioned the 42 months in scripture in regard to the term left in Trump's term. Where was that scripture? That was Revelation chapter 13, Aki. And again, I'm not saying that it is connected to Trump. I'm just saying that it could be possible, but not saying that it is. So Revelation chapter 13, and that is verse 5. Verse 5, Aki. Okay, right there. Let me get my pen here. Revelation 13:5. And he was given mouth speaking great things or greatness and blasphemies, and he was given authority or power to do so for 42 months, 3.5 years. Okay. Ed Yahoo, you say, what do you think of Lucas 12, 48 and 49. Let me see. Lucas 12, 48 and 49. I'm not familiar with that passage. 48 and 49. But he who did not know, yet did what deserved flogging, okay, now I'm remembering, shall be beaten with few. And everyone to whom much is given, for him much shall be demanded, and to whom much has been entrusted, from him much more shall be asked. I came to send fire on the Arats, and how I prefer it were already kindled. So two different things are happening there. One has to do with those who have been given a lot. They have been responsible. They have been given a lot of insight by the Ruach. And if they don't use that insight, that knowledge, that wisdom that was given them correctly, they're going to be held at a higher standard, just like what Yaqub says in his letter, right? James. Yaqub says, let us not all be teachers. For being a teacher, you're going to be held to a higher standard. You're going to be judged more harshly. Okay, this is what the Mashiach is saying here in Lucas chapter 12. Now, as far as verse 49, I came to send fire on the Arats, and how I prefer it were already kindled or have already started. This fire has to do with the Ruach, has to do with the Spirit. Remember what happened on the day of Shavuot, also known as Pentecost. And wind came rushing in, and there were, as it were, cloven tongues of fire were upon each one of the heads of those that were up in the upper room, and they began to speak with diverse languages. That began the move of the Ruach. He immersed them in fire. He baptized them in fire, and how he wished that that fire would have started already, but it had to happen after he left. And so when Shavuot came, here comes the fire. It started the awakening of his people coming into the truth. Let me see here. Michelle, 34:22. You say, please, could you explain Galatians 4:3 and 5, and what does it mean he came to redeem those that were under the law? Also, Galatians 5:1-3. Okay, Michelle. So those are great questions. Let me go to the scriptures, because I already have things underlined there. So let me read it from there. Let's go to Galatians chapter 3. Galatians chapter 3. A lot of people like to use Galatians to say, see, we're no longer under the law. But they don't understand what it means to be under the law. Many of you in here already know this. But for Michelle and those who don't know, let us enlighten them, and may the Ruach open their eyes to this understanding. Okay, let me get a sip of my lemongrass and ginger tea, because this is we're gonna go in depth a little bit here. We need to go in depth when it comes to this. Okay. All right. So Galatians chapter 3. Okay. Yes, and I see you also put chapter 4 as well. We're gonna hit all of those. Okay. We're gonna hit all of those. But I need you to see something here, Michelle. Okay. I know you say chapter 4, 3-5. And then, so, okay, let's hit that first. Let's do chapter 4, 3-5, because this is what you're asking me. Chapter 4 of Galatians 3 and 5. So we also, when we were children, were under the elementary matters of the world, being enslaved. But when the completion of the time came, Alua Elohim sent forth his son, born of a woman, born under the law, to redeem those who were under the law, in order to receive the adoption as sons. Okay, so now, that's what you wanted me to read. And then you said Galatians 5:1-3. In the freedom with the Messiah has made us free, stand firm then, and do not be again held with a yoke of slavery. See, I, Shaul, say to you that if you become circumcised, the Messiah shall be of no use to you. And I witness again to every person being circumcised that he is a debtor to do the entire law. You who are declared right by the law have severed yourself from the Messiah. You have fallen from favor. Okay? You have fallen from favor. I know you told me to only go to 3. So now, hearing all of this, it sounds like Shaul is telling you, don't keep the law. That's what it sounds like. But this is not what he's saying. This argument that is going on here in the book of Galatians has to do with circumcising the children of the flesh. Okay? That these Gentiles who are coming into this truth, there were those, first of all, they didn't even believe in the Messiah, some of these people that was telling this to the Gentiles, that they have to keep the law. And one of the things that they had to do was they had to circumcise their flesh in order to keep the law. And they'll say, look, let me take you to the Torah. Look what it says here, that all men must be circumcised in the flesh. Okay? And so this would convict these Gentiles to say, is it true we have to get circumcised? And now some of them are old guys. They're like, man, this is going to hurt. This is going to be serious. But let's back up. Because if we're just taking this from this information here, you're going to think exactly what Christianity wants you to believe, like what it says here. And I witness again to every man being circumcised. Notice what he's talking about. Being circumcised, that he is a debtor, he's a slave to do the entire law. Okay? You who are declared right by the law, or justified in some other translations by the law, you have severed yourself from the Messiah. It's not having to do with keeping the law. It has to do in thinking that you are now cleansed by the law, that you are pure by the law, by keeping the law, that you have become justified now to everlasting life because you are keeping law. But what Shaul is reminding them, he's saying that, look, you who are circumcised, you are indebted to do the entire law. If you're going to do this, then you have to keep it to the T, everything to the T, no matter what, even including offerings, slaughterings, even though we know that's been done away with. But if you want to keep the law, like some of these people who are in the Torah only movement, they think everything is supposed to be done according to the law. That's not what we're teaching, and that's not what the Messiah was teaching, and nor was Shaul, Paul, teaching this. Let me show you why. Let's go back. Under the law. What does it mean to be under the law? Here's the key to what it means to be under the law. Okay, first, let's read this. This is Galatians chapter 3, okay? And we're going to start right here from verse 10. Chapter 3, verse 10. For as many as are the works of the law are under the curse. For it is written, cursed is everyone who does not continue in all that has been written in the book of the law to do them. So what is Shaul, and why is he bringing up this passage out of Deuteronomy chapter 27? Because from the time we are born to the moment that you transgress the law, that very moment that you transgress the law, and no matter if you never transgress the law ever again in your life, but you did it that one time, you are still a transgressor of the law. All it takes is one time. That's all it takes. So it says, cursed is everyone who does not continue. Means that it's unbroken. If you are continuing into something and you are still keeping it, you are indebted to do everything that has been written in the law. You must do it. The moment that you break from doing the law, this is what happens. For as many as are the works of the law, they are under the curse. Curse of what? The curse of the law. Well, what is the curse of the law? Let's see. Let's continue to read. And that no one is declared right or justified by the law before Alua Elohim is clear. For the righteous shall live by belief. And the law is not by belief, but the man who does them shall live by them. By what? By the law. So, verse 13, the Messiah redeemed us from the curse of the law. So now if we go back up here, for as many who do the works of the law are under the curse. They're under the curse if they're doing works of the law? The Messiah redeemed us from the curse of the law? So what are we being told here? If you're trying to keep the law, it's a curse to you? Is that what we're being told? Because that's the way it's being taught in Christianity. The law is not a curse, but there is a curse for not doing the law. Let me say that again. The law itself is not a curse, but the one who does not keep the law, they commit or they are under the curse for not keeping the law. So what is the curse? It says it right here. The Messiah redeemed us from the curse of the law, having become a curse for us. For it has been written, curses everyone who hangs upon the tree. He became the curse for us. So then what is the curse? The curse is death, not the law. The law is not the curse. When it says that you are under the law, it's talking about you are under the curse of not keeping the law. So if you don't continue keeping the law, the death penalty comes about. That's the curse. That's why the Messiah had to take on the death penalty on our behalf. He who knew no sin became sin for us. He took on our death penalty. He became the lamb, the pure lamb, the unspotted lamb, taking away our transgressions for breaking the law. We broke the law. Somebody has to pay it. Before the Messiah came, it was the blood of lamb, bulls, and goats. But the lamb, bulls, and goats, when they had to offer those things up, did they not continue in the law? Yes, they did. That was a discipline. The animal had to be unalived on our behalf because we didn't keep the law. Somebody has to pay the penalty. So the Messiah says, you know what? I'm going to pay it. You don't have to keep unaliving these animals anymore because why? He wasn't satisfied with the blood of lambs, bulls, and goats. But a body you have prepared for me, it says in the word. He was pleased with this body. A body that would, the person who would be in that body would never transgress the law. And in this way, he can take upon our penalty, our curse. We were born under the curse of the law because we were all born into sin. We were all born into transgressing the law. And so the only way out of transgressing the law was that the Messiah had to come and he had to pay that penalty for us. But that doesn't negate us to continue on in keeping it. It's just like if you have a child. What did he say to us? He says that those who he loves, he disciplines, he chastises us. Well, we do the same thing with our children. We give them rules and we spank them when they are out of line. Why do we spank them? Because we want to give them something to remember by, to say, if you do this again, I'm going to spank you again. And I'm doing this because I love you, because I don't want you to be disobedient. So what are you teaching your child? Okay, every time I step out, I get punished. And if you stay doing bad things, you're going to keep getting punishment. A curse is going to fall upon you. But if you stay in my lane, you stay in my word, I'm going to barak you. I'm going to bless you. No punishment comes. That's because you're staying in my instructions. And so it is the same with the law. The law has not gone anywhere. What Shaul was telling these men who were trying to be justified by the law by snipping the foreskin of their flesh, they thought that that was going to make them perfect. And you can't be made perfect by breaking of the law, because once you broke it, you've always become a transgressor. The only way you can be made right is by the blood of the Messiah, because he covers your mistakes. He covers your transgressions. He covers every time you broke the law. But that doesn't mean you don't keep walking in it. You have to get back on that narrow path. This is why he says only a few are going to find it. So let me show you some other things about being under the law. Let's go to Romans. Let's go to Romans chapter 3. Romans chapter 3, verse 9 says this. What then? Are we better than they? Not at all. For we have previously accused both Yahudim and Greeks that they are all under transgressing the law. There's your under. They're under what? Transgressing the law. That's what sin means. The definition of sin is the transgression of Yahuwah's law. And as it has been written, there is no one righteous, no, not one. There it is right there. Everyone has broken the law at least once. There is no one who understands. There is none who seeks after Alua Alahim. They all have turned aside. They all have together become worthless. There is none who does righteousness, no, not one. Verse 19 says this. And we know that whatever the Torah says, it says to those who are in the Torah. That are in the Torah, meaning that they are keeping Torah, so that every mouth might be stopped and all the world come under judgment before Alua Alahim. Why does it say this here? Therefore, by the works of the law, no flesh shall be declared right before him. For by the law is the knowledge of transgressing the law. That's why we are under the law. We're under the penalty, the death penalty. Every time we break it, we are under the death penalty. But now, apart from the law, the Torah, righteousness of Alua Alahim has been revealed by the witness, by the law and the prophets. Again, that is Genesis all the way to Malachi, prophets. That's the whole Old Testament. And the righteousness of Alua Alahim is through belief in Yahushua the Messiah to all who believe. For there is no difference. For all have sinned, all have transgressed the law, and fall short of the esteem of Alua Alahim. We've missed the mark. Being declared right without paying by his favor through the redemption that is in the Messiah Yahushua. What did he just say here? We are declared right without having to pay for it. He paid the penalty. He became this very fanciful word, propitiation. He became the cost. He redeemed us, whom the Mighty One set forth as an atonement through the belief in his blood to demonstrate his righteousness, because his tolerance of Alua Alahim has passed over the transgressions that had taken place before, to demonstrate at this present moment his righteousness, that he is righteous and declares righteous the one who has belief in Yahusha. So then where then is the boasting? Is it shut out by what law? Of works? No. Of works? No. But by the law of belief. For we reckon that a man is declared right by belief without works of the law. Why is he saying that? People say this, right? Oh, see, we don't have to do the law without the works. It doesn't say not to do the law. Why do we keep adding? See, we don't have to do the law. It doesn't say that. It says, for we reckon that a man is declared right by belief without the works of the law. It's not saying you don't do the works of the law. It's letting you know that you are not made right by doing the works of the law. Something else is making you right, but it's not by you keeping the law. Or is he the mighty one of the Yahudim only, and not also of the Gentiles, of the nations? Yes, of the nations also, since it is one mighty one who shall declare right the circumcised by belief, that is by obedience, and the uncircumcised through belief or through obedience. Notice what verse 31 says, for those of you who are mistaking that the law has been done away with. Do we then nullify? Do we make void? Do we abolish? Do we destroy the law, the Torah, through our faith, our belief? Let it not be. Just the opposite. On the contrary, we establish the law. We establish the law, people. The law has not been done away with. Let's continue. Let's go to Romans chapter 6. Romans chapter 6. Let's read verse 14 and 15. For transgression of the law shall not rule over you. Notice that. For transgressing the law, sin, shall not rule over you. For you are not under the law, but under favor. So let's backtrack this. What does it mean here, Michelle? What are we being told here? Transgression of the law shall not rule over us. Remember, the Messiah says, who you give your members to, you become a slave to it. Okay, and if you give your members over to the flesh, you become a slave to your flesh, which is a slave to sin, which would then be a slave to transgressing the law. For you are not under the law, which means you are not under the penalty of death for not keeping the law, but you are now under favor. You're under favor. You no longer are under the death penalty. Why? Because again, what did we read in Galatians chapter 3? He became a curse for us who knew no sin. Galatians 3, let's read that again. He became a curse for us. The Messiah, verse 13 of chapter 3 of Galatians says, the Messiah redeemed us from what? The curse of not keeping the law. Having become a curse for us, for it has been written, curses everyone who hangs on the tree. So again, we know that the law is not the curse. He didn't redeem us from the curse of keeping the law. No, he redeemed us from the curse of not keeping the law. This is why we had to read, the same person who wrote Galatians wrote Romans, and this is why we read this here at the very end of Romans chapter 3. You got to put all of this together. You can't pick and choose. Here he says, do we then nullify the law through the belief? Let it not be. On contrary, we establish the law. Okay, so if we establish the law, then it is not the law that's the curse. What is the curse is not keeping the law. And so it says the same thing over here. Let me back up. Let's read this before we go to the very first verse of chapter 6. So then, as through one trespass there resulted condemnation to all men, so also through one righteous act there resulted righteousness declaring of life to all men. Notice verse 19, for as through the disobedience of one man, many were made transgressors of the law. So also through the obedience of one man shall be made righteous, or of one, many shall be made righteous. It doesn't say all shall be righteous, but we all became sinners because we all came from Adam. We didn't all come from Yahusha. We didn't all come from Yahusha. So even though Yahusha gave his life for us, not everyone is going to benefit from it, but only those who trust and obey. Those who don't trust and obey, they're not going to benefit from what happened on that tree. And the Torah came in besides so that the trespass would increase. But where transgression of the law increased, favor increased still the more. So that as the transgression of the law did reign in death, even so favor might reign through righteousness to everlasting life through Yahusha, the Messiah, our master. Notice what it says here. So that the transgression of the law, sin, did reign in death. This is the death penalty. That's what happens. What does it say here at the very end of chapter 6 of Romans, verse 23? For the wages, the cost of transgressing the law is the death penalty. But the favor, the gift of Alua Alahim is everlasting life in the Messiah, Yahusha, our master. So if the wages of transgressing the law is death, then what is the wages for keeping the law? It's got to be life. It has to be life. And this is what he is saying here at the very beginning of chapter 6. What then shall we say? Shall we continue in transgressing the law so that favor may increase, so that grace may increase in some of your translations? Let it not be. He's saying, no, on the contrary, just the opposite. How shall we who died to transgressing the law still live in transgressing the law? Or do you not know that as many of us who were immersed, those of you who have been baptized have been immersed, you were immersed into the Messiah Yahusha and were immersed into his death. We were therefore buried with him through immersion, through going into that water, into death, that as the Messiah was raised from the dead by the esteem of the Father, so also we should walk in the newness of life. So when you had went into that water and you come up out of that water, you were supposed to be a different person. You're supposed to be a different being. You're supposed to be walking in the newness of life and not in the oldness of the way you used to be. So let's continue. Let's go to 1 Corinthians chapter 6. 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 12. It says this. All is permitted me, but not all do profit. All is permitted me, but I shall not be under authority of any. Food is for the stomach, and the stomach for foods. Notice the word food. But Alua Elohim shall destroy both it and them. And the body is not for whoring or prostituting or committing adultery, fornicating, but for the Messiah. Your body belongs to the master, the Messiah, and the master for the body. And Alua Elohim, who raised up the master, shall also raise up through his power. Do you not know that your bodies are the members of the Messiah? Shall I then take the members of the Messiah and make them members of a whore? Let it not be. How do we make it a member of a whore? If we don't have to keep the commandments, why is Paul talking like this? How do we make our bodies a member of a harlot and not a body of a virgin? We're supposed to be clean. We're supposed to be pure. We're supposed to be spotless. If he's coming back for a bride without spot or wrinkle, how is that to be kept if we're not to keep the law? What are we being judged by to say that we are a clean bride if it's not the law? What is the standard if we're not using the law as a standard that we are using, that we are now spot and blameless? What is it that we're using? Are we using the commandments of men like I was sharing earlier? Yes. The commandments of men. The commandments of men have told us we don't have to keep the commandments anymore. The commandments of men say you don't have to keep the Sabbath anymore. The commandments of men say that his name doesn't matter. You can call him Jesus. You can use the title God and Lord. You don't have to pronounce and enunciate the name Yahuwah. It doesn't matter. Some people want to call him Jehovah. Some people want to call him Yahweh. Does that matter that you're not using the right name? Yes, it does. Because he told us what his name was. These are commandments. Now you can brush off commandments all you want. You're just showing yourself, you're exposing yourself to be that exactly what you are, a transgressor of the law. Who is going to save you? If you're not doing what is pleasing to the master, who is going to save you? Because he's the only savior. Your pastor can't save you. Your doctrine can't save you. Your understanding and opinion can't save you. The only thing that is going to save you is that you do what he tells you to do. And then if you do that, then the blood of the master covers you from all of your wickedness. Let me show you what I'm talking about. What does it say here in 1 John? Verse 6, it says this. If we say that we have fellowship with him and walk in darkness, that means you are not walking in the light. And if you're not walking in the light, you're not walking in the Torah. The Torah is light. His word is light. He says, I am the light. And if he is the light and he is the word manifested and he is called the word of Elohim, how come you can't put it together? Why can't you connect the dots? The light equals the word. The word equals the Messiah. The Messiah is the light. If we say that we have fellowship with him and walk in darkness, we lie and are not doing the truth. But if we walk in the light, not in the darkness. We are walking in the light as he is in the light. What is he doing? He is also walking in the light. We have fellowship with one another, and the blood, the dam of Yahushua, the Messiah, his son, cleanses us from all sin. So for you to have his blood take activation, because that is the trigger to remove, to cleanse you of breaking the law. That does not take effect in your life unless you are walking in the light. You have to be walking in the light. You have to be doing his commandments. And if you continue to read this, you're going to see how it seamlessly goes right into the commandments. Let's continue. Again, but if we walk in the light as he is in the light, we have fellowship with one another, and the blood of Yahushua the Messiah, his son, cleanses us from all sin. Again, that's how the blood takes activation in your life. If you're walking in the light as he is in the light. If we say that we have no sin, if we say that we have never transgressed the law, we are misleading ourselves, and the truth is not in us. If we confess our transgressions of breaking the law, he is trustworthy and righteous to forgive us of our transgressing of the law, and he will cleanse us from all unrighteousness. If we say that we have not transgressed, we make him a liar, and the word is not in us. Notice that. If we say that we have not transgressed the law, we make him a liar, and his word is not in us. My little children, I write this to you, what he just told you, so that you do not transgress the law. What? So that you do not transgress the law? He's telling you right there, the law still exists. That's what sin means. But let's continue. And if anyone transgresses, we have an intercessor. This is our Messiah, the mediator. We have an intercessor who intercedes with the Father, Yahusha, our Messiah, the righteous one. He himself is the atoning offering for our transgressing of the law. Not for ours only, but also for all the world. Remember, he did this for the world, not just for the Jews, not just for the Hebrews. He didn't do this just for the Israelites. He did this for the world. But notice what it continues to say here. Listen to this, Michelle. And by this we know that we know him, if we guard his commands, if we keep his commandments. I think that does away with everything that everybody wants to say about the commandments no longer need to apply. Galatians chapter 3, Galatians chapter 4, Galatians chapter 5. A person can twist it, spin it, do whatever they want with the letter of Paul. They can excuse themselves from keeping the law, but I'm not going to be one of those. I don't know about you, but I'm not going to be one who is going to excuse myself to say, you know what? I don't have to keep the law. Why are we so blunt and brute about not wanting to keep the law? Notice what it says this. By this we know that we know him if we keep his commandments. The one who says, I know him, Christians, and we are not keeping his commandments, we are a liar. And the truth is not in us. But whoever keeps his word, truly the love of Alua Elohim has been perfected in him. By this we know that we are in him. The one who says he knows him or loves him or stays in him, abides in him, dwells in him, ought himself, herself also to walk even as he walked. Now, earlier I said what he told the young rich ruler in Matthew chapter 19. He told the young rich ruler, this is what you lack. Go and sell all your possessions, sell it, give it to the poor, give the proceeds to the poor, and come and follow me. Follow me. You need to walk as I walk. Walk after me. Let me show you how to keep the commandments. Because that's what he did. The whole time he was teaching his disciples how to walk in the light. That's what he was teaching them. If you go to Matthew chapter 28, verse 19, the so-called Great Commission, remember what he says here about teaching them. He says, first you are to immerse them in the name of the Father, Son, and the set apart Spirit. And we know that name to be Yahusha, Acts chapter 2, verse 38, Acts chapter 10, verse 42. in Acts chapter 19, and I can't remember the verse, but everyone was immersed in the name of Yahusha. They were not immersed. I now immerse you in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the set apart Spirit. That is not the formula. The formula is the name. Father is a title. That's not a name. Son is a title. That's not a name. Spirit, there's many spirits. That's not a name. The name that is above all names is the Messiah. But notice what verse 20 says: teaching them to guard, to keep all that I have commanded you. What did he commanded them? He says, pick up your walking stick and follow me. He said to Matthew, he said to all the fishermen, Peter, Andrew, Philip, he said to all of them, drop your fishing hooks, drop your fishing nets, pick up your walking stick and follow after me. I'm going to show you how to walk this Torah out. I'm going to show you how to keep the commandments. John, who wrote 1 John, what we just read out of, he testifies to this. He testifies to the commandment. The commandment is to keep the commandments. He who does not keep the commandments and says that he knows the Messiah, that person is a liar and the truth is not in them. How many people can you call right now a liar in Christianity who is telling you not to keep the commandments? Practically every one of them. Look at all the denominations, even the Seventh-day Adventists. They're not keeping the commandments. They're not keeping the feast days. They only keep the Sabbath. And the only Sabbath that they know is the fake Sabbath, the Friday evening, the Saturday evening. I see that they learned well through the cultures and the customs of the Hebrews as they received it from the Babylonians. Doesn't make it right. The truth is to be found written, not to be told behind a pulpit. These people spin what they want you to believe. The word says too many times we are to keep his commandments if we love him. That should go without saying. But again, like one of the Aki said to me, and I shared earlier, how come we didn't see this before? Because it wasn't time for us to see it. The time is now. The time is now. There's a reason why people are stuck on certain verbiage, certain words, certain names, certain doctrines, certain traditions, certain holidays, certain calendars, because they truly are not seeking the truth. They act like they know the truth, but those who are hungry for the truth, those who are thirsty for the truth, Yahuwah is going to reveal it to them. Those who already think they have the truth, like the Pharisees and Sadducees, you ain't getting no new revelation. You ain't getting no revelation. You're stuck right where you're at because you already think you've arrived. To those who think they are well, they need no need of a physician. And yet the Messiah says, I come to those who are sick. I come to those who need a physician. Many of you, some of you, let me say, who are hearing me, you're not here to hear the truth. You're here to push your doctrine, your fake doctrine that you haven't even tested, a doctrine that you haven't even looked into. You're nothing but a parrot, Holly want a cracker parrot, and you're parroting what has been spoken to you. And so your words don't hold no weight here. Your words are going in one ear and out the other, just like our words are going in one ear and out the other with you. Because you can't hear these words. These words don't belong to you. And you might not belong to him. And if you don't belong to him, then you're wasting your time. These words are very crucial. It's so key. It's so easy to see. And it's right there in the New Testament. And you still have people who will argue straight-faced up and down that we are not to keep the commandments. And yet we're reading right here in 1 John chapter 2, verses 3-6, that anyone who says that he knows him and does not keep the commandments, that person is a liar and the truth is not in them. Let me ask Simon Rodriguez. I got a question for you, Simon. Are the laws done away with? Yes or no? Let's see if you'll answer me or if you're going to spin it. Are the laws done away with, Simon? You can't answer a question with a question, Simon. So here's my point, Simon, and I'm not attacking you, okay? Your problem is that you think you know the truth, and that's where you're falling, okay? Because if you don't keep his commandments, Simon, you can give your examples of the thief on the cross, as you say, all you want. But here's the thing about the thief on the cross, okay? When the thief first was nailed to that tree next to our Messiah, he too was belittling our Messiah. He was calling him all kinds of names, okay? But somewhere while he was nailed to that tree next to our Messiah, he had a heart of repentance. That heart of repentance shows that he came to believe in the Messiah, okay? No, he didn't get a chance to go get baptized as we've been commanded. No, he didn't get to walk out the law as you're asking. But you know what he had? And this was his predicament. This is his situation. You can't use this as a blanket statement for everybody who's ever lived and who ever will live, as if they are. This is all you got to do. What about the thief on the cross? Everybody loves using the thief on the cross. The Messiah said to him, because he showed that he believes in him, what did he say to him? What did this thief say to our Messiah? He said, remember me when you come into your kingdom. Isn't that what he said, Simon? Remember me when you come into your kingdom. He was begging for mercy. There's probably all kinds of things that went through that man's mind that was hanging on that tree next to our Messiah. We're not told about those things, Simon. You're assuming. All we know is that the Messiah says, I tell you, today you shall be with me in paradise. Now, with all that being said, Simon, I just showed you what he said about the Great Commission. I don't know if you was here. You might want to read it. Matthew chapter 28, verse 20. He says to go out and teach them what I have taught you to observe. What do you think he was teaching them, Simon? How to break the commandments? How they don't have to keep the commandments? How they don't have to keep the Sabbath anymore? But yet the Messiah was keeping the Sabbath. The Messiah was keeping the commandments. Simon, Simon, Simon. You are not listening, my friend. And I don't know when you came in, but I went over Galatians chapter 3. I went over Galatians chapter 4 a little bit, and I also went over Galatians a little bit of chapter 5. Okay? He has redeemed us from the curse of the law, which is the death penalty. The law is not the curse, Simon. I know what you've been taught because I used to believe the same. I used to preach the same thing that you're trying to preach to a person who used to preach the same thing, Simon. But you're not listening. You're not listening. You're not listening, Simon. If you want to push your agenda, because this ain't TikTok, okay? You're with believers who have turned their back on Christianity. You're with believers who know that we are to keep the commandments and believe on the Messiah. You're with believers who keep the Sabbath, okay? You're with the believers who keep the feast days, the holidays. We don't keep Christmas and all these pagan holidays, which I'm probably sure you probably still keep, and your holidays of your birthday. Okay. So, all that being said, and you're not even looking at what is in front of you. You're not even looking at what is in front of you. You're trying to use all the arguments that Christians use why they don't want to keep the law. You say you know the Messiah, right? But you call him Christ. You said earlier that we're called Christians because we follow Christ, right? Well, again, we're not Christians here, and we don't follow Christ because your Christ teaches that the law has been done away with. Our Messiah teaches that the law has not been done away with. Matthew chapter 5. In fact, you're mentioned in Matthew chapter 5. That's what I'm going to read. I'm not going to read Matthew what you want me to read. Okay? Let me show you. Let me show you what it says here. Now, I don't know if you're going to believe this or not. I'm sure you're going to do verbal gymnastics with this too. Do not think that I came to destroy the Torah, that is the law or the prophets. Notice what he says here, Simon. Simon, do not think that the Messiah came to destroy the law or the prophets, Simon. The Messiah says he did not come to destroy it, but to complete it. You see, what you're saying is that the law has been destroyed, Simon. You're saying the law has been nullified, Simon. You're saying that the law has been done away with, Simon. But the Messiah says otherwise. Who do you think we're going to believe, Simon? We're going to believe you, Simon? And the people who taught you like I used to be? Or are we going to believe in what the Messiah says? Notice what it says here, Simon. For truly I say to you, Simon, till heaven and earth passes away, Simon, one yod and one tittle shall by no means pass from the law, Simon, until all be done. Simon, let me ask you a question. Does heaven and earth still exist? Yes, it is. Yes, it is. You can capitalize fulfilled all you want. The word fulfilled is the same as complete. It's different than destroyed. What you're saying is destroyed. Let me show you what he says here, Simon, because the gears in your brain keep going and you're making my point. And I hope Abba Yahuwah opens up your eyes to what I'm trying to share with you. Verse 19 says this, whoever then, like Simon, breaks one of the least of these commandments and teaches men so, like Simon is teaching, not to keep the commandments, you shall be called least in the kingdom of heaven, Simon. That doesn't mean you're getting in heaven. I'm going to show you. But whoever does and teaches them, Simon, which you're not doing, you're not teaching to keep commandments, he or she shall be called great in the kingdom of heaven. Do you want to be called great on Judgment Day? Or you want to be called least on Judgment Day, Simon? Because if you're called least on Judgment Day, this is what's going to happen to you. For I say to you that unless your righteousness, Simon, exceeds that of the scribes and Pharisees, your preachers and teachers, you shall by no means enter, Simon, into the kingdom of the heavens. Now, you might want to ask yourself the question, and not about the thief on the tree. Is he in heaven today? You might want to know if you're going to enter. You might want to find out if you're going to enter, Simon. All right. So for those of us, we know, just like it says here in Hebrews chapter 4, notice what it says here. Verse 9 says, so there remains a Sabbath keeping for the people of Alua Alahim, Turata Akiel. So there's a Sabbath keeping for us who are the people of Alahim. The Christians don't have to worry about this because they're not Sabbath keepers. They're not Sabbath keepers. Because a Sabbath keeper is one who knows when the true Shabbat is. You see, this is why I was showing you earlier about translations. You look at that same verse, Hebrews 4:9 in the King Jimmy version, the King James version. Notice what it says there. They hide it. They don't want you to keep law, just like this Simon character. I know you follow Jesus because you're saying everything that he says that has been taught to all of us that I used to share. Hebrews chapter 4, verse 9. There remains therefore a rest to the people of God. See how they removed the word Sabbath? Because that would be the cat out the bag. You're supposed to keep the Sabbath. They don't want people to keep the Sabbath. Who doesn't want us to keep Sabbath? Who doesn't want us to be obedient? Is it not Satan? Yes, it is Satan. Who's the one that gave everyone a great, strong delusion? Was it Satan or was it the Creator? It was the Creator. It wasn't Satan. Yahuwah was the one that allowed Satan to bring about Christianity. Christianity, with its name, the name of the beast, Jesus, with the image of the beast, the cross, has been given to those who don't want to hear the truth, nor can they, because their ears are plugged from hearing the truth, because they already believe they have it, like the Simon brother here. They have no understanding about the sacrificial understanding of the order. They don't understand because none of us who were in Christianity understood what the Levitical law was as it pertains to sacrifices. Why there had to be a shedding of blood. Why the Messiah's blood was shed for us. How does the blood of the Messiah take activation? You got to be walking in the law. If you're not walking in the law, you're not covered by the blood. And if you're not covered by the blood, you're not born again. And if you're not born again, you have no everlasting life dwelling in you. That's the strength of the law. That's the strength of the law. That's why nobody can be justified by keeping the law. Your justification comes by the shedding of the blood, Simon. But in all that you do, you better be walking out the law. That's why he told the woman, and he told another one, go and sin. Don't go and transgress the law anymore, lest a worse thing come upon you, Simon. But if you don't know what the word transgression is, which is the law, or the transgression, which is sin, then you won't understand that you have to keep the law. Let's see here. Yeah, it's about that time. We appreciate you stopping by, Simon. So, I want to thank all of you for your time with me today. We're getting ready to go to TikTok. I hope that some of you learned about the commandments, how they have been removed, how they told people in the book of Acts. I showed you 2 places in the book of Acts where they lied, and they added words saying that we never told you to keep the law. It's crazy. It's crazy. And no wonder why we have so many people confused. But again, we were there too once, weren't we? And we thank Abba Yahuwah that he opened up our understanding. And we pray, we palal for those who are his people, those who he already knows, he already foreknows who they are. That's who we palal for, that he opens up their eyes quickly. For we know that the time is short. We know that the days are becoming short. All right. Well, with all that being said, I want to thank each and every one of you. Let's go ahead and do the ironic barakah so that we can go ahead and get over. So I can hear some of y'all's voices. All right. Let's do the ironic barakah in Bamidbar, chapter 6. That is Numbers, chapter 6, verses 22 to 27. And the book reads, And Yahuwah spoke to Moshe, saying, Speak to Aaron and his sons, saying, This is how you barak the children of Yasharal. Say to them, Yahuwah barak you and guard you. Yahuwah make his face shine upon you and show favor to you. Yahuwah lift up his face upon you and give you shalom. Thus they shall put my name on the children of Yasharal, which is Yahuwah, and I myself shall barak them. I want to thank all of you again, Tuda Ata Mishpaka, for your time, spending your time here with me. Hope to see you on TikTok under the same handle, Ambassadors of YAH. Until next time, my name is Og Jimmy, also known as Brother Jimmy, and we are the Ambassadors of YAH.
Yasharo, straight out of the book, the scriptures. Verses sharper than fishing hooks, snagging souls, taking tolls, leaving devils shook. Who we be? Messengers, truth bringers, that's the key. Unlocking minds, leaving darkness in debris. We are the ambassadors, ambassadors, yeah. We are the ambassadors, ambassadors, yeah. Spreading love from near to far. We are the ambassadors, ambassadors, yeah. Listen close, hear us, yeah. We are the ambassadors, ambassadors, yeah. Spreading love from near to far. We are the ambassadors, ambassadors, yeah. Listen close, hear us, yeah. Verses be thumping, shofars be blowing, beat be steady. Word power every hour, truth already. Planted deep secrets keep fools unsteady. We elevate till your fate be ready. No compromise. Open your eyes, see the light. Walk tall, stand strong with all your might. We are the ambassadors, ambassadors, yeah. Spreading love from near to far. We are the ambassadors, ambassadors, yeah. Listen close, hear us, yeah. We are the ambassadors, ambassadors, yeah. Spreading love from near to far. We are the ambassadors, ambassadors, yeah. Listen close, hear us, yeah. See the light, walk tall, stand strong with all your might. We are the ambassadors, ambassadors, yeah. Spreading love from near to far. We are the ambassadors, ambassadors, yeah. Listen close.